Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission. We are joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners Benjamin, Cerullo, Crowell, Dweck, Gold, Kermani, Marin on Zoom, Osorio, and Rampersad. Before we get to today's agenda, I would like to take a moment to go over some citywide and neighborhood planning news from the past couple of weeks. Last Wednesday, Mayor Adams announced the release of the Green Economy Action Plan, a first-of-its-kind plan that lays out a roadmap to growing the city's green economy. This plan will invest in jobs and industries that will help the city combat climate change and train and position New Yorkers, particularly those from environmentally disadvantaged communities, to benefit from the nearly 400,000 green-collar jobs expected to exist in New York City by the year 2040. For example, as part of this announcement, Mayor Adams highlighted the creation of a new climate innovation hub at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which will help grow green technology startups and businesses. Thanks to significant policies like this and our recently approved City of Yes for carbon neutrality, we are on our way to a greener, healthier, and more prosperous future. In other news, Mayor Adams, the New York City Department of Design and Construction, and the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation broke ground on the new $92 million Mary Callie Dalton Recreation Center in Tompkinsville, Staten Island. The center will feature sports courts and indoor-outdoor running track, fitness and cardio rooms, and electric vehicle charging stations. This project was a commitment of 2019's Bay Street Corridor Neighborhood Plan and is another great example of how we are turning promises into progress. Finally, this Thursday, March 7 at 6:30 p.m., the Department of City Planning is holding a virtual community meeting on the Midtown South Mixed-Use Plan. This will be an opportunity for New Yorkers to learn about our draft planning approach for the neighborhood and where we are in this planning process. If you live in, work in, play in, or frequent Midtown South, I highly recommend that you attend this meeting to learn more about our work to turn this area into a more vibrant 24/7 community with homes, jobs, and improved amenities. On to today's agenda. First up, we're going to have a special presentation from the Department of City Planning's Urban Design team on the principles of good urban design, an illustrated guidebook that will provide the public with a roadmap to improve the way our city looks and feels. The principles of good urban design will help to democratize the design aspect of planning with a set of shared values and language through which all New Yorkers can evaluate, discuss, and advocate for meaningful, lasting changes that improve the city's urban landscape. Through this resource, we can work together for a quality design in our neighborhoods and get to yes on a more dynamic, greener, and more welcoming city. Moving on to new projects entering public review, the Commission will hear about a proposed residential building located at 3117 12th Street in Astoria. The development would include 35 homes, nearly 10 of them income restricted, and be close to resources like Socrates Sculpture Park and the Noguchi Museum. Next, we'll head to Red Hook, Brooklyn, to learn details on 150 Mill Street, a new commercial building that would include offices, ambulatory diagnostic uses, and retail, including a supermarket. The site is within walking distance of Red Hook Park, several bus stops, and the F&G trains at the Smith 9th Street station. Staying in Brooklyn, we'll head to Bay Ridge to learn more about a proposed residential building known as the Shore Hill Heirs Development. Heirs stands for Affordable Independent Residence for Seniors, and this site would certainly match that title, bringing nearly 140 income-restricted homes for seniors in Bay Ridge. Future tenants would live close to several bus lines and Shore Road Park. The Commission will also review and vote on a transit easement certification for East 94th Street. This is a private application for a joint certification from the CPC and the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and is a requirement of all developments within the Special Transit Land Use District to to determine if a transit easement is needed on the site to reserve space for the 2nd Avenue subway. We'll go over modifications the City Council made to 230 Kent, proposal to build 40 homes, dozen of them income restricted and ground floor retail in Williamsburg. And for our post-hearing follow-ups, we'll continue our discussion on Green Fast Track, which will help tackle the housing crisis by cutting red tape and streamlining environmental review for climate-friendly small and medium residential buildings. It is a good start to a busy week, so let's get going. Sarah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Monday, March 4th, 2024. The time is 1:06 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item is a special presentation by Chief Urban Designer Eric Gregory and Senior Lead Urban Designer Ryan Jacobson regarding the Principles of Good Urban Design Guidebook.
Great. Welcome and thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Grodnick. Thank you, Vice Chair Knuckles, and good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Eric Gregory. I'm the Chief Urban Designer here at City Planning, and I'm joined with Ryan Jacobson, our Senior Urban Design Team Leader. Together here, we are to provide an update on the Department's of City Planning's Principles of Good Urban Design and the public release of the guidebook, which I believe each of you has a physical copy in front of you. I do want to take a quick note and thank many of our DCP colleagues throughout the agency across many divisions that have helped bring this moment to reality, and we are extremely excited to be here. We've been busy at the department, and it's been a while since we were last here with you, January of 2023, to share the soft launch of our Principles of Good Urban Design. Today, I'll provide a brief refresher of the principles, recap some of the main points of feedback we heard from you. I'll then pass it to Ryan to walk you through the guidebook, and we'll wrap up with some thoughts on where we go from here. So the principles remain the same from what we released from a high level back in January of last year. They are a set of values that are meant to inform how we approach design in New York City, a way in which we not only examine how the city looks, but the experience of how it feels to live, work, come together, and move around the city. The principles describe how design can influence one's daily experience by making the city a more enjoyable and comfortable place, how design can support the quality of life, well-being, and health, and how design can help foster a sense of belonging and civic pride. Our work has been focused on elaborating, grounding, explaining how to translate these values into action items. Our process took several years, and it included meeting with community board meetings, including all 5 borough boards, which really helped us spread the word on the interactive website that we created, where we heard from over 1,500 New Yorkers from Staten Island to City Island and the ways that they feel the principles could be better. We had public events like Earth Day to get on the ground, workshops with the AIA, American Institute of Architects, design and planning professionals to better understand how principles can collectively improve design outcomes, and connecting with interagency partners to find synergies among city agencies. We also held a roundtable with developers to understand how good urban design can make more valuable projects. We heard a lot of great questions from each of you last January. A few of them are highlighted here. Most have been addressed with the guidebook, including grounding the principles of specific objectives and real-world examples. Some are spoken to, like the relationship between other codes and regulations, as well as other agency guidelines. And others we'll talk about our path forward that speaks to further integration into our processes here at DCP and additional resources for New Yorkers. Lastly, the primary goals of the Principle Guidebook are to help set expectations that align with a vision for the city, shape better design outcomes through a shared approach, demonstrate how good urban design is more than just aesthetics, and bring more people into the conversation of planning and designing the city. I'll now hand it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Eric. Since this morning, the guidebook has been available for download on DCP's website. The 4 chapters are used to ground the principles of good urban design by providing clear use cases, articulating actionable goals to bring each principle to life, and showing 5 built project examples that demonstrate intent and interaction between principles. We'll take a brief dive into some of the material from the guidebook. Chapter 1 is about justifying the need and use cases for this guidebook. We answer the question, what is urban design in New York City? Highlighting the importance of thinking about how people experience our city and how urban design not only supports an attractive city, but a city that is functional and dynamic, a city that feels safe and inclusive. Urban design requires thinking across a variety of scales. Good urban design not only improves your experience when you're moving down the sidewalk, but it also identifies strategic opportunities for improving economic, social, and environmental conditions at the scale of a block, a neighborhood, the city, and even our region, ensuring that the city is well coordinated, adaptive, and that it performs for our diverse population. The principles of good urban design are a shared set of values and goals to help New Yorkers have constructive conversations about the future of our city. They guide people to think beyond hyperlocal challenges and identify ways that each project can lead to better neighborhoods and a better city. Whether you are a proud resident who attends community board meetings, a parent who wants to shape a better future for your children, or someone who already has experience in planning and design, we hope that this guidebook will have something for you. The guidebook is a shared tool that can be used in a variety of ways, such as engaging at the local level, or guiding development teams in their design and planning process, or better integrating urban design in our city's policy goals. The guidebook provides actionable goals to help people bring each of these principles to life. We are going to walk through each principle and use an example project to highlight how the objectives play out on the ground. Keep in mind that this is only a Cliff Notes version of what's in the guidebook. First principle, whether it's a sidewalk that is wide enough for rush hour crowds, storefronts that enliven the street, or a plaza that has comfortable chairs to relax in, details and dimensions impact how people experience the city. Principle 1 is about sharing design strategies that can improve safety, accessibility, comfort, and beauty. Mixed-use buildings that are well connected to neighborhood services, public spaces, and public transit are a great example of projects that exude the first principle. Cyrus House is an affordable housing infill project near Fordham Plaza in the Bronx. It uses its space efficiently by prioritizing homes over parking spaces. On the ground floor of the building, a mix of commercial and residential uses wrap the three frontages. Large storefront windows and multiple building entries make the space feel vibrant and inviting. The building scale is also broken down by changes in height, recessed walls, and a change in materials. These architectural details strengthen neighborhood beauty and promote walkability. Good urban design, like planning, involves a rigorous process of investigation, engagement, and analysis to support thoughtful outcomes. Principle 2 shares actionable goals to strengthen the planning and design process, ensuring that new projects are shaped by the community and informed by existing networks, assets, and identities. Collaborating with local leaders, from longtime residents and business owners to parents with young children, helps bring clarity to community needs. During hands-on meetings in East New York, Cypress Hill, and Ocean Park, components of the East New York Neighborhood Plan took shape as community members spoke out about their priorities. The East New York neighborhood planning process was iterative. Similar to a design process, many interests, ideas, and objectives were shared from a variety of perspectives. Good urban design synthesizes this information by drawing out maps and diagrams to better understand the nuances of neighborhood spaces and their relationship to larger networks. This drawing was created to visually communicate where there are opportunities so we can involve the right people to identify solutions. Iterative modeling is also a big part of neighborhood planning work. Good urban design analyzes how building form can respond to a site's surroundings, like street width or open space adjacencies. It identifies where public realm improvements are needed to support land use changes and where land use can help activate the public realm. New York is a dynamic and vibrant world capital. Good urban design embraces that spirit and rhythm that is characteristic to our neighborhoods. Principle 3 shares objectives for blending old and new, along with ambitions to spark creativity and innovation and ensure that spaces are designed to celebrate public life. When developing city-owned land, we have a unique opportunity to shape site programming and design through an extensive outreach process, like the one led by HPD for Sendero Verde in East Harlem. The built outcome includes programming that attracts residents, students, workers of various professions, and visitors, adding energy and new experiences to the neighborhood. The elevated courtyard contains a variety of spaces that diversify East Harlem's public space network. The site plan arranged buildings to maximize sunlight within the open space, to reintroduce community gardens, along with flexible open spaces. Community uses and educational facilities are located in the lower floors, which open directly into the plaza space. This activates the public space and provides people with convenient access between indoor and outdoor areas. Lastly, our city faces many challenges from climate risk to the housing crisis and social inequities. Principle 4 puts forth actions to help each project make progress towards a built environment that is healthy, inclusive, and adaptive, and processes that embrace diversity and facilitate mutual understanding. Principle 4 cannot necessarily be captured in a single project, but this example along the Gowanus Canal shows how certain objectives come to life. 300 Huntington sets the stage for the kind of development and quality of open space that will be created along the canal. It is unique in that its non-residential use will bring a variety of different people to the waterfront, providing opportunities for social interaction. The development includes environmental improvements such as site remediation, techniques to capture stormwater, and a dynamic esplanade design that addresses flood risk. Inviting seating areas and a variety of social spaces encourage people to enjoy their time in this public space. They will be surrounded by a diverse array of native and aquatic plants that can thrive in this environment and help restore the canal's lowlands ecosystem. The guidebook also includes resources to help people who want to participate in shaping the future of their neighborhood. This example includes questions that a community member could pose when a new development is proposed in their neighborhood. The guidebook includes a step-by-step user guide to help people determine when and how to get involved in various types of planning and design projects. And since the principles of good urban design are only a component of delivering quality to all New Yorkers, the guidebook links out to other design resources where people can explore specific topics within the field.
Thank you, Ryan. So, our path forward. Tonight we've got an event at the Center for Architecture, which is sold out. A diverse group of speakers will be there to show how their work exudes these principles. We'll also be crowdsourcing additional feedback for other case study examples to include, as well as ways in which we might make these principles more actionable and grounded in work. We envision doing more continuous outreach, of course. We want to be mindful of our community board members and the sheer amount of work that they're reviewing now, but we do think it's important to circle back with them and share this resource, as many of them provided feedback. We do want to continue to build out a repository and hopefully have more of those online so we can show the diverse ways in which these projects can come to life, and also perhaps highlighting more about the process of making them. And finally, we think it's important that as we take on a lot of these BLAST initiatives and other ways of refining our processes here and other agencies, we do think it's important to, once that kind of settles in, to kind of come back and provide supplemental resources for applicant teams on how design review works at the department. With that, we have finished our presentations and would love to hear your questions and comments.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And again, we know how much time and energy and effort went into putting this together, and it's really important, and we appreciate it very much. And it's a great work product, and I know the whole department feels very, very proud of the work that you all did. So thank you for that. I have two questions, and I'll just pose them to you together, and then I'll go to my colleagues. One of them is, we have neighborhood plans that are underway. We have individual projects that are being considered by community boards and other community groups. If somebody had this either in their hand or they had it on their computer, and they wanted to impact or ask the right questions or to begin to know where to start on questions of urban design on a neighborhood or individual development, where would you point them in this document as the starting place, and how would you recommend that they use it? So that's one. And then the question is, tell us a little bit more about how you think that this can be credibly updated with future projects and future things going forward. So those are my two questions.
Great, thank you. So the last one first. We do think that most of this will be an online platform, so I think that's where we want to push that, and perhaps the agency's working on revamping its website, and I think there's ways that we could find interactive ways to bring these tools forward to New Yorkers. So I think online will probably be the biggest format, but you did mention something that we are striving for, is that we feel this is a living document. It was released originally in 2017, albeit just a pamphlet. And we do think it's important to revisit these over time and augment as needed. With respect to your first question, I think, we highlighted a couple resources in the book. I think this would be a really good one to start, although it's towards the back of the publication. But really understanding what project you're trying to be engaged with and what phase it's in, right? Certainly, if it's coming through to a public review process, there are probably more opportunities versus one when you're seeing construction actually taking place. So I think really getting a sense of what the project is, both in status, scope, and schedule, is probably important. We think that the objectives, which we didn't list here, but Ryan highlighted a few of them, but that at each principle does give someone much more concrete questions that could be reframed, as we've reframed some of those objectives here into questions around different things that might be important for you to push for on a project. So that could be, what uses are being contemplated at the ground floor, how can this, development support our community? Are there spaces for community-related uses here? What's the connection to transit? So many different ways that you could connect here. So I think those are a couple ways that I would, and of course the case studies are also a good way to kind of communicate some of that.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, if it is in the context of a neighborhood planning process, I would look at the thereto and the East New York neighborhood plan, because they really talk through process and where urban design is integrated into the different steps of that planning process.
Great, thank you very much. Let me go to Commissioner Cerullo and then Commissioner Gold.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to congratulate you and the whole team on this. It's really, I think, really a very helpful guide. A couple of thoughts just in terms of bringing some of the conversations and experiences that I'm engaged in Midtown that relate, if not specifically in part, to some of what of this guidance provides in terms of establishing sort of public realm priorities and sort of the pedestrian experience and good design. And I just wonder your thoughts on this. There's really two categories. One is the sort of the movement toward creating additional uses on our sidewalks and the impacts those things have on urban design, or should they be a part better of urban design? And just two examples that I can think of immediately, wayfinding signs and other structures, and containerization of trash, which is now required of every business and residential building in the city, and what impact those uses now have on good urban design, and how should we be responding to that so that there's some relationship between those uses and good urban design, not just 8 million pails on our sidewalks, which undermine all the other design elements and principles for people's experiences in the public realm. And then the second issue is sort of a public safety related one, and that ties into those areas where design is supportive or facilitates activations in public space, and the relationship between those spaces and vehicles. And because currently, and this is for quite a while now, if it's a public space that's on the waterfront and there are no cars, or it's a public space in the middle of a development, that's not relevant to this. I'm talking more about public spaces that have a relationship to the public way, and because bollards and other protective mechanisms are making their way into our city through a variety of priorities, which hard to argue public safety, but that also is having an impact on the public realm and spaces and design. And truthfully, I don't think we have an appropriate design at all for that kind of a use. And if it's going to be something as we grow public spaces and improve design in those spaces, both public and private, how do we come up with an appropriate design that doesn't look like a big bollard on the sidewalk, but yet does its job, but then somehow works its way into the experience people are having and doesn't look like something that stops something from happening versus becoming part of life. So they're really just thoughts, but those, when I look at the renderings are perfect, but I know like in my life, I'd be drawing bollards over here and I'd be putting garbage pails over here, and there'd be 6 giant kiosks and poles, which don't make, those are the sort of the reality checks. And I just wonder just whether those kinds of considerations at some point get brought into it. So it's not just what should a private developer be thinking about in terms of their space, but what should our city be thinking about, and what impacts do all these things that our city is doing have on good design and good public realm?
Thank you for those thoughts and questions, Commissioner. Many different ways that this could play out. I think the Office of the Chief Public Realm Officer, Yao-Ting Liu, is a good place to start. And I know they're committed to kind of working with across city agencies, Department of Transportation being one of them, where a lot of the curb adjacent related things that are changing, right? It's like we're in the midst of it, whether it's open restaurants or containerization. We're kind of reevaluating that space and its relationship.
Deliveries now, these micro delivery things that, there could be lockers set up on sidewalks and other things.
I think our hope is that the department can be a part of those conversations, that we offer a unique perspective that's broad-reaching, and it's also important the role that we play in thinking about the land uses that buildings provide at those ground floors, right? That has a heavy influence on what takes place to the curb and the sidewalk. So I think that's a space where we certainly have been over time, and in the future look forward to being further a part of those processes. And I think, the safety component is key. Certainly, our colleagues at the fire department and the police department have a mission to do, which is critical. And we are seeing ways that we can think through. There's a specific rating that barriers have to have. In most cases, it's like a K rating, has to withstand a blunt force. Yep. We have tried through projects. Borough-based jails is one of them. The Brooklyn facility actually is looking at new methods to incorporate seating and other things into it, but still allowing that porosity. So if you get dropped off to go to that facility, you can kind of get out of your car. So I think that's an ongoing conversation that many agencies need to be a part of.
Well, I certainly would be an advocate for the department being engaged in those things, given your expertise and knowledge and vision. So we'll in any conversation that I am in, and there were many, and Ting is doing an awesome job in trying to put all of these pieces together, I certainly would welcome the opportunity for the department to be engaged in them as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold.
Excuse me, I wanted to echo the compliment on the document. I think it's super helpful. Just had one or two questions in there. One is, certainly as I read this and looked through it, it's definitely a nice guide for, presumably for architects and, for others to look through. But I guess the broader question is, what do we foresee as, the appropriate mechanism for lack of a better word, for enforcement, right? So, we basically are giving this guide, but, people can take it or leave it. Is it the department? Is it the commission hearings? Or is it, is there something more to just, encourage folks along? Because obviously this is not law. This is, some recommendations.
Great question. This is a starting point, right? Certainly, we work with a lot of other colleagues here to enshrine some of these things into zoning where we need to, and that starts to tend more to specific places and locations, and that's definitely where a lot of this will kind of translate into making sure that it happens. This also speaks to a lot of other jurisdictions, which Commissioner Karuller just spoke to, that are a bit beyond what the department maybe controls, but has a lot of influence. So I think it's also important to recognize that there are lots of sustainability and local laws that dictate what a building needs to do to perform from a resiliency and sustainability perspective. And certainly we wouldn't want to step in front of those, but merely start to ask the questions at the outset of a process, that they start thinking about these or have the ability to remember to speak to them. Many applicant teams and designers are well in tune with this and probably on some of the details know them better than we do. And certainly we don't want to get in front of that. So I would say really latching on to other guidelines, other codes and regulations is where this is going to get most of that kind of hook.
Got it. So, it sounds to me like a lot of it, though, is really planting the seed, if you will.
Correct.
Where it becomes a starting point, and, the hope and the goal is that folks follow, but, things go through. Okay, got it. That's helpful. And then one other question is, I looked at the principles. I was thinking about a number of the projects that come before us. I would say to you, any given project, at least two of them apply, two of the four, and sometimes it's three, sometimes it's four. But principle 4 was the one that, sort of grabbed my attention, confront society's greatest challenges, because on its face, it makes good sense, and as I think we characterize it, it does make good sense. But as I look at the examples in the guidebook, just about every example we have there is really about sustainability, right? I looked through, we use the words eco, green, sustainability, passive, everything, the top example. So when we think about it, I know there's some other pieces to it, but are we seeing that as, effectively, when we say confront society's greatest challenges, is it just another way to say, hey, we want to be sure that you're thinking about sustainability properly?
Sure. I think Ryan kind of pointed to this when we spoke about the 300 Huntington example. It's always challenging, right? This is kind of like the larger compass that we're all gravitating to. I will say that the principles in nature are trying to touch on different scales, right? From the immediacy of every day, I've got to get to the grocery store. How are we designing that environment? All the way up to this one, and certainly we welcome ideas and suggestions that any of you have that we can tease out some of the other areas that this is aiming to do. I will point to the East New York example as probably one that starts to touch on how our processes are. That was a few years back, and I'd say even now with the projects like this Cross Bronx Expressway study that we're undertaking with the Department of Transportation is really starting to, come from a place of co-designing with communities. And I think that this gets to, starts to speak to some of those things that are highlighted within the confront society's greatest challenges. I think, certainly all of you are pushing forward more housing for New Yorkers, and certainly just creating more opportunities there is key. The quality of those spaces and units are also key. So, I think that's something that we can speak to with respect to that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, and thank you for the work on it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations once again. I mean, I echo everything that has been said in terms of the importance of this work. Specifically, I wanted to highlight what Commissioner Cirillo said about showcasing the expertise of the department on this. People are excited about it. I tell you that my students are waiting for it. We've talked about it in class, and people are going to use it. So that's great. I'm specifically excited about the case studies. And so I'm wondering if there are opportunities to maybe animate some of that through a story map or some of the other resources that the department has created in the past with other projects, just to sort of like basically maximize the impact that this can have on the public in terms of understanding what are examples and where are they, like a map. I'm imagining an interactive map when you can actually go and see the case studies and then go visit them, etc. Really quick, the other suggestion that I wanted to make, because I very much agree with what Commissioner Gold said, but I'm also remembering what Commissioner Benjamin said when we first heard this, that, you know, if you wanted to move forward with this, there's always a 197A that you can consider to make this policy. What I think you're hearing from the Commission is that we are excited about it and would love to use it in terms of our own review of the project. To that end, you know, or maybe in the meantime, I'm wondering if you've considered the idea of creating some type of scorecard that people can actually use to evaluate projects on their own, applying the principles, maybe nominate additional case studies or create additional conversation about the principles as they relate to their own experiences in New York. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much for your suggestions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Goodrich, followed by Commissioner Kermani.
Work. It's very easy to follow, and so congratulations on. I have one quick question. Well, I don't know if it's quick, but one of the things I have really been grappling with as we think about like urban design, and I actually see it here, is like what are the actual distinctions of who is supposed to build? And so I wanted to ask, you know, like for here, it says the roles like government, and it's to play an important role in how public policy shapes the city, then developers. And so it's almost like a foregone conclusion that like the way that we're thinking about design is it supposed to be private developers? And this is actually a question I get a lot about why the city isn't building more housing. And so I wanted to ask about that, about, you know, if we're thinking, not why the city isn't building more housing, but if we're thinking about a broad-based policy plan and how we're thinking and shaping policy, then, you know, just your thoughts about like just sort of almost inherently like making the developer separate from the government. Like the role of the government is just to do the thinking, the private developer is supposed to develop, as opposed to building more Michelamas, building, you know, contributing more to the affordable units. This is literally the number one question I get. But why is, I think I've said enough, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can answer your question. I think, you know, design is, of course, one component of a larger, you know, effort, you know, here. But certainly, you know, I think, I don't think we, you know, our point wasn't to, you know, to put out there that, you know, it's on the developer or the private community to you know, make good design. We, in fact, think it's not only about how you're delivering a product, but the road that you're taking to get to that product is important. We, of course, have lots of different ways that we build, you know, through our design department of construction, various community facilities, libraries, other assets. You know, they're not specifically housing, but I think those are ways in which we lead, right? And we help. We use design firms to help us, you know, showcase quality design through different public facilities. I don't know if that's probably not getting exactly what your question's alluding to, but you know, I think what we're trying to say is that there's a lot of city making that takes place, and it needs to come from a broad swath of folks from different focus areas. And so our aim was to try to you know, create a document that could be flexible, that could, you know, be utilized in a number of different ways. And so that's why, you know, that's how we tried to carve out the target users of this document.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, and big congratulations on all the work that went into this. And I echo so many of my fellow commissioners' comments, and, you know, language is really important. So I just want to appreciate the word confront, because it's a cousin of the word disrupt, which I think is important and can be used that way. There's disruption for disruption's sake, which is sometimes useful, and then there's disruption that confronts larger issues and then breaks up things that have with anything, but particularly with design that has been racist and exclusive as opposed to inclusive. And I think to many of our points and your points, and like, where is the opportunity for that kind of disruption, and who can use these principles as an act of disruption to an end, right? That increases equity in the city. And there are organizations who are doing that already. And so I think there's an audience. I don't think you don't know this. I just want to underscore it. There is an audience of organizations who are not developers, who are doing urban design, whether or not they would call it that, right? Academically or professionally, they may not call it that, and that's okay. These principles can be applied to that work, or these principles can reinforce work that's already happening. So I think it is important that this book, these guidelines, these words get in the hands of organizations who have been doing the work anyway and can either say amen, yes, and can add to it. And in addition, there are organizations who do work in the policy realm and can possibly hold this up and say, see, they said it, like, this is what we've been. So I think it's important to acknowledge, and I think that you are and we are, that a lot of this work has already been happening, and that this can back up that work that is purposefully disruptive.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, of course I want to echo the fact that I think you guys have done a great job, but my question is, how is this going to be implemented on a city level? Since city projects are some of the larger projects that will be in most neighborhoods, how are other city agencies, when the police department is looking to design a new police station, how are these principles going to be used by the police department, not just on the exterior, but also the interior, which will determine in many ways the possibilities for the exterior? And I don't want to concentrate on just the police department, but all of the city agencies that have facilities, the school construction authority, all of them are designing, and how are we bringing them into this process with these designs? And number two, and importantly, how do these designs work with the Public Design Commission?
Wonderful question. Thank you, Commissioner. I think I'm glad that you mentioned the Public Design Commission. We work very closely with them and have for a number of years. And to an earlier point about bollards, there was actually a security infrastructure task force that they helped convene that did bring the police department. It brought us to the table. It brought a Department of Transportation. And like, we would go out and we would walk the streets and we would look and talk about what impact they were having and how could we think about a new one. And that work kind of fizzled out before the pandemic. But I think that's one example where these larger challenges of how to make sure that future police stations can be better designed, I think that would be a great conduit for those types of conversations. That, along with roping in the Chief Public Realm Officer and her team. So, I think our hope, I believe some of the questions that you're giving us are really great for us to go back. I think we're talking about lots of next steps, and how do we go to, representatives at the police department that are contemplating new facilities or other city agencies and share with them this work, so that they at least are, one, aware that this resource exists. I think that's probably step one for us. And then, to the last point, thinking through how we could work with other agencies like Public Design Commission to convene broader conversations to make some of these things a bit, use this as a lens by which we would kind of grapple with a particular question or project.
And secondly, I appreciate that answer, and I think that needs to happen sooner rather than later, because it also ties into DCAS and BOLD and the value engineering that goes through, the capital budget process is a very long process for most agencies. From the time they think of a need to the time they get the spade in the ground, so to speak, it's 6 or 7 years, at which point the money that was allocated is not necessarily enough to fund the project today. But when they go through the BOLD part, is BOLD going to look at good design, even though it may cost more, and allow agencies that flexibility, or are they going to say, no, this certainly happened years ago with the Parks Department, and where design at DCAS said, we can't, you don't need those. There's a cheaper solution, and you need to take it because city budget dollars are needed all over. So how are you going to interact with that whole idea of the value engineering? And is the city committed to paying extra for this good design?
I mean, I think what our job is to, try to make sure that we're a part of conversations early on with projects that are deemed, necessary for us to be engaged in. And I think by getting in at the ground floor, that can help. I mean, it's not going to alleviate value engineering as a whole. But what I would hope is that as that process continues, you have the ability to at least put forward the options of what could be scaled back and what kind of needs to hold. And as designers, we can kind of help, visualize and showcase that in a way that's understandable, but certainly, and try to make the case as best we can. But ultimately, the decision makers at hand that control the purse strings are the ones that are going to make the final decision. So. And
last, have they been involved at all?
Has DCAS been involved with this? No, but I think it's a great point about, I think, next steps is now that we have these established, how do we kind of move forward and help inform a variety of different processes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Crowell.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to build on what everyone said. This work is tremendous, and I'm very excited about it. And when I sat down and saw the book, I was like, it's just wonderful. I just want to build on what my colleagues have been saying. Is there an opportunity to create a multi-departmental approach to looking at this now that it's been created, and bringing together all these different agencies? My fellow commissioners are speaking about. I'm thinking about DDC and others. I mean, these are some provocative questions that are worth not only exploring, but forcing every agency to think a little more deeply about how they do things and how it relates to all the principles that are being enunciated here, which are very contemporary, and I would imagine at some agencies at least, there hasn't been a tremendous amount of thought to them. It seems like a moment to think about how to do that and how to do it in a way that can be compelling and really distinguish how we're planning government-wide versus the way others might do it.
Thank you for that. Over the years, we did convene interagency design groups across, not just capital agencies, but many others. And we would, because there are designers or, architects that work in other agencies, and we would have moments to kind of come together and talk through work. I think that's something that we would like to kind of reconvene, hopefully with the help of Yating Liu, the Chief Public Realm Officer. And, I think our hope is that these can be values that are shared across, right? That they are holistic in nature and can be adapted. But I also want to respect that, DDC, for instance, has a guiding principles document that they put out a number of years ago. I'm not aware of how they're updating that, but I know that they're, critically thinking about their own processes now. And I think we would welcome working with their chief architect and whomever else to kind of think through how these can be folded into some of the work that they do as an example. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Kamani?
Yeah, just quickly to that, to that point, which I think is really important, that, NYCHA has its design principles too, and it's kind of what's good for the city is good for NYCHA. And getting those, I think alignment is super hard, but just exclamation point on what you just said.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin?
Last thing for me, the other agency I would suggest that you get in touch with sooner rather than later is OMB. Because in the end, with all city projects, those are the people who are going to determine how much money and whether the value that is placed on good design has a financial cost that they're willing to support.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioners, for your comments, and to the urban design team. Thank you both, and of course your entire team, many of whom are here. We really appreciate all of the efforts that you've put in. Look forward to celebrating with you later this evening and sharing more details out there in your sold-out event at AIA. Congratulations, and we look forward to getting some great reaction out there in the world. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our, yes. Give them a round. Let's move on in our agenda to the first official item on the calendar.
The next item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 1. Our presenter is Derek Jasmine.
That's what I was just saying. Concentration.
Great. Hello. Welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon, Commission. This is the 3117 12th Street rezoning. This is a private application by 311719 1Z LLC for a zoning map amendment from an existing R5B zoning district to an R6B zoning district and related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area. These actions would facilitate the development of an approximately 26,500 square foot, 5-story residential building containing 35 dwelling units, including 9 income-restricted units located at 3117 12th Street in Astoria, Queens, Community District 1. The project area is marked here in red and is situated within the old Astoria section of Astoria, just southeast of the Hallett's Peninsula and north of Ravenswood. The surrounding area is characterized by its mix of scales and uses, ranging from vacant lots and 1-story light industrial buildings to 20-story residential buildings. Building types in the area include 2- and 3-story detached, semi-detached, and attached houses, 4-story residential buildings, a 9-story three-building development known as Astoria West, and a 20-story building known as East River Tower on the block directly west of the project area. Major wide roads in the area include Vernon Boulevard, 14th Street, 21st Street, and Crescent Street, all of which run north to south, and Broadway and 31st Avenue, which run east to west. 12th Street, where the project area is located, is a 60-foot wide narrow street running in the northbound direction. Astoria Houses, a NYCHA campus, is located approximately 2 blocks to the northwest of the project area. Ravenswood Houses, another NYCHA campus, as well as Queensview North, a housing co-op, are located approximately 1/2 mile to the south. Recent ULURP applications in the area include Broadway and 11th, which became effective in 2021, 11th and 34th, which was effective in 2022, Hallett's Point became effective in 2013, and Hallett's North effective in 2022, all of which are highlighted pink on this map, and the project area is located within the transit zone. The development site is occupied by 5 small 1- and 2-story buildings. One of these buildings is currently a residential building, and the others are used as an accessory garage and commercial space. Most of the non-applicant owned lots are improved with 1- to 3-story, 1- and 2-family semi-detached and attached houses. There are several community facilities within the surrounding area. The Islamic Unity and Cultural Center and Ideal Islamic School are located directly to the south of the project area. PHS Neighborhood Astoria, a social service organization, is located about 500 feet northeast of the project area. Christian Church of Astoria is roughly 600 feet to the east, and Long Island City High School is located about 1,000 feet southeast of the project area. Public open spaces include Astoria Health Playground, Socrates Sculpture Garden, Hallett's Cove Beach, and Rainey Park. Bus service to the surrounding area is provided by Q69 and Q100 along 21st Street, the Q103 along Vernon Boulevard, and Q104 along Broadway. The nearest subway stations are located at Broadway, as well as 30th Avenue stations located along the N and W lines, both of which approximately are 7 blocks east of 12th Street. There are also several city bike stations located along Vernon, 14th Street, and as well as adjacent to LIC High School. As seen here, the immediate surrounding area is characterized by a mix of land uses, including industrial manufacturing, residential, and public facility uses. Industrial uses are located mostly to the north, south, and west of the project area, while mixed commercial and residential uses are mostly mapped to the north and east of the project area. The project area itself is located within an R5B zoning district that covers a portion of 4 adjacent blocks at the intersection of 12th Street and 31st Drive. To the west and immediate north, an R7A district with portions of C13 and C23 overlays are mapped along Vernon Boulevard, 11th Street, and Broadway. To the north and east of the project area is an R6B zoning district, mapped on both sides of 31st Avenue to the north and 14th Street to the east. The project area consists of the applicant-owned development site on Block 18, Lot 13, outlined in red here, as well as lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16, 8, 17, 18, and parts of lots 5 and 19, which are not applicant-owned. And the project area itself is bounded by 12th Street to the west, a line 100 feet south of 31st Avenue to the north, 31st Drive to the south, and a line 150 feet east of 12th Street to the east. The development site located on Lot 13 is an irregularly shaped lot that consists of an approximately 10,400 square foot rectangle that fronts on 12th Street, as well as an approximately 1,700 square foot dogleg that extends 68 feet northward from the main portion of the development site. Here we have a view of the development site from 12th Street facing east, and you can observe part of the 5 small buildings located on the development site with residential as well as parking uses. This view faces west along 31st Avenue at the intersection with 12th Street. And to the right here, we can see the development known as Astoria West, completed earlier this year. And to the left, we can see the 20-story East River Tower, completed in 2009. Facing east along 31st Avenue, this is another view of the Astoria West development, fronting along the northern side of the street. And lastly, in this photo, we are looking at a view of 14th Street facing north with the Astoria Health Playground on the left. The proposed rezoning would facilitate the development of a new 5-story residential building containing 35 dwelling units and approximately 26,500 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 2.2, the maximum permitted for R6B districts under MIH. The proposed development will have 9 income-restricted dwelling units pursuant to MIH Option 1, and the proposed development will have a 4-story, 43-foot-high street wall with the 5th floor set back 15 feet from the street line. And in total, the building height will reach 53 feet. There will be 15 open accessory parking spaces located at the rear of the development and 18 enclosed bicycle parking spaces in the cellar, accessible via a new 12-foot wide curb cut along 12th Street. And the approximately 1,700 square foot dogleg located at the northeastern portion of the development site will be kept as open space. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment from an existing R5B zoning district to an R6B zoning district, and that will increase the maximum allowable residential FAR from 1.35 to 2.2. R6B districts are contextual districts typically developed with 4- and 5-story attached multifamily buildings with a maximum base height of 45 feet and a maximum building height of 55 feet and a maximum floor area ratio of 2.2 in conjunction with FAR, or with MIH, and required accessory parking of 50% of all dwelling units. The applicant also proposes a zoning text amendment to map MIH Option 1, which will require 25% of the floor area residential floor area to be permanently affordable at an average of 60% AMI, and with no dwelling unit at more than 130% of AMI. In conclusion, this is a private application for a zoning map amendment from an R5B to an R6B zoning district and related zoning text amendment to map MIH Option 1. These actions would facilitate the development of an approximately 26,500 square foot, 5-story residential building containing 35 dwelling units, including 9 income restricted units at 3117 12th Street in the neighborhood of Astoria, Queens, Community District 1. And this concludes my presentation. I'm ready to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you very much. This item certified.
Great. Thank
Very
you.
clear. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 6. Our presenter is David Weisglass.
David.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. There we go. Good afternoon. The project before you is a rezoning application at 150 Mill Street. This item will be certified today. The applicant for this project is BP Mill Street LLC. This is located in the Red Hook neighborhood of Community District 6 in Brooklyn. This is also located in Council District 38, which is the district of Council Member Alexa Aviles. And the applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment from an M11 district to an M15 district. The action will facilitate a 10-story, approximately 64,000 square foot development with retail use proposed as a supermarket at the ground floor and cellar level, community facility uses at the second and third floors, and office uses above. No parking is proposed as part of the development, as none is required. Here we can see the project location on a land use map, and I'll have more detail on this in the next few slides. Here you can see the purple industrial uses predominantly to the south, as well as to the east near the Gowanus Canal. But directly adjacent to the property to the north and to the west are predominantly residential uses, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in these slides here. Here's a closer image showing not only the land uses, but the zoning in the area as well. Again, while this is an area with significant industrial uses surrounding, they're predominantly located to the south of the project area, which you can see in purple here. Directly to the west of the project area are the Red Hook NYCHA houses, as well as several community facility uses shown in blue. The houses in the surrounding area are predominantly zoned R5. Further, just across the Gowanus Expressway is Carroll Gardens, a neighborhood which includes mostly residential uses, with Court Street being a local commercial street. Zoning districts in this area are generally R6B, with Court Street designated as R6A with a C24 commercial overlay. To the south are additional M11 districts, as well as some M31 districts closer to the canal that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right there. On this image, you can also see the significant difference in the lot sizes. As you move from the south to the north towards the project area, you could see the larger lots of the industrial area being replaced with smaller lots, which we tend to find in predominantly more residential areas. This here is an aerial image of the neighborhood with the project area shown in yellow. Land uses in the area include residential and mixed-use buildings to the north and the west, and industrial uses south and east towards the Gowanus Canal. The subject block itself includes several institutions that I'll go into detail a bit later. As for open space, the Bush Clinton Playground and the Red Hook Pool, which is part of the much larger Red Hook recreational area, are located about 2 blocks southwest of the project area. The area is located in the transit zone and is well served by public transit, with 2 bus routes serving the area. The B57 bus runs from Gowanus to Maspeth, and the B61 bus runs from Red Hook to Park Slope. The Smith and 9th Street station, which serves the F and G lines, is located approximately 3 blocks northeast of the project area. Additionally, there are 4 city bike stations within 2 blocks of the project area, and bike lanes can be found on Mill Street, 9th Street, Court Street, and Clinton Street. The project area is just within the northern boundary of the Southwest Industrial Business Zone, or IBZ, which is shown here shaded in purple. Here we can see a closer look at the subject block, and this image is facing generally southeast. It's to orient yourself. The project area, again, is outlined in yellow with the development site outlined in pink. The development site is occupied by a one-story building and an open lot for a scaffolding business. The remainder of the project area is occupied by a residential building and restaurant, which is located just south of the development site, as well as a warehouse, an auto body facility, an industrial building, and a gas station at the corner. Some community facilities here include the Strong Place for Hope daycare, which is located directly west of the project area and partially within the project area, actually, as well as the New Brown Memorial Baptist Church at the intersection of Clinton and Center Streets. Additionally, a post office is located just across Center Street from the subject block. Additional retail uses are found along the east side of Clinton Street as well, right across from the Red Hook houses. I wanted to show one more image just to kind of show the mixed nature of the subject block and the surrounding area. Here in this image, you can see that there are certainly industrial uses at the south side of the project area. You can see the gas station, the car wash, as well as the warehouse. However, directly adjacent to the development site, you can see that residential building over a restaurant. You can also see the daycare, medical use across the street, and the NYCHA houses kind of in the background. This is shown from underneath the expressway, of course, facing west. I did want to show very quickly that this project area is just located within the 0.2% floodplain area on the preliminary flood insurance rate map from 2015. Here I'll go into some more images of the project area. This here is an image of Mill Street looking east towards the Gowanus Expressway with the project area shown on the right with that underlined in yellow and the development site underlined in purple. That brick building that you see just cut off on the right side, that is within the project area slightly. That is the daycare that is aforementioned, a portion of which will remain in the project area, however, is not proposed to be redeveloped. This is a direct view of the project area from underneath the expressway, with the project area underlined in yellow and the development site in pink. While the project area, again, shows the daycare, that brick building to the right, that's not proposed to be redeveloped, but it is within the project area. This is a photo of the project area facing west. You can see the development site in pink and the project area, which includes the adjacent residential building and the restaurant at the left side of your screen here, underlined in yellow. And here's one more photo of the project area facing west. Again, you could see where the development site specifically ends, that fence there with the painting on it directly adjacent to the residential and retail building. Here I wanted to include an image of the floor plan of the proposed development. Again, a supermarket is proposed at the ground floor and the cellar level. Here you could see the freight lobby will be on Mill Street, whereas the building's main lobby and supermarket will have entrances on Hamilton Avenue, which is directly beneath the Gowanus Expressway. And here is a section facing north. As you can see, the Gowanus Expressway kind of shown to the right side of the image here. This shows the proposed supermarket and supermarket at the ground floor and the cellar level, as well as the proposed diagnostic facility above and office uses above the community facilities on the 4th through 10th floor. My apologies. The applicant, as stated, is requesting a rezoning from an M11 district to an M15 district. M11 districts permit manufacturing and commercial uses at an FAR of 1.0, with parking required at a rate of 1 space per 300 square feet of floor area. M15 districts permit manufacturing commercial uses at an FAR of 5.0 with no parking requirements. Neither district permits residential uses. In summary, the applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment from an M11 to an M15 district. The actions will facilitate a 10-story, 64,000 square foot development, which will include retail uses proposed as a supermarket at the ground floor and the cellar level, community facility uses at the second and third levels, and office uses above. And again, no parking is proposed as none is required for the proposed development. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you, David. So this, the change from M11 to M15, you just noted the differences on FAR and on parking. The site is, I think you described it as a bit of an irregular shaped site. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. I'll see if I can get back to a better image showing. That's an image there, so you could see the site outlined in, look like pink on my computer upstairs, but let's call it purple here.
Okay, and right now you have a mix of uses, right? It's at the end of an IBZ, but you have a little bit of a mix. You have lots of residential right nearby. You have the Red Hook houses, post office, daycare next door. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely a mix of uses, and this is in contrast, I think, to what you may find a couple blocks south, when some of those larger lots.
And there is a residential building right next door to this. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now there is that residential building is already, it's not compliant with existing zoning, but this.
It's non-conforming.
It's a non-conforming building, and it's still non-conforming, but perhaps less non-conforming as a result of the change, or is it? Can we not even say that?
I would call it probably essentially a lateral move.
Lateral move.
It will remain non-conforming, but it will not increase its rate of non-conformance, as residential is not permitted in either an M11 or an M15.
Yep. Okay. Let me go to Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, I have a couple of questions that may be for the developer, but maybe you know the answers. The first was the supermarket entrance and the office entrance. I understand there's no parking, but in many supermarkets, people drive or get car services. Is there a lay-by lane or some other way in which people with their shopping can load their car?
I'd have to get more detail from the developer on what's proposed there.
Okay, because I'd like to see something, as we know from many new supermarkets, whether it's car services or family members, or that people drive to pick up their goods, and they will here too, particularly.
Certainly. Understood.
And then related to that is on the left side of the screen, where the freight goes in, how do the trucks get themselves in there? Do they front in and back out? Do they not go in at all and they just load over the sidewalk? What's the expectation there?
If I were to I was going to kind of give my assumption kind of just based on eyeballing, looking at some of the dimensions, but I don't want to necessarily speak out of turn.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough room for them to front in and front out onto onto the street. So I'm assuming that they either front in and back up across the sidewalk, or that they don't ever go there, that somehow they're loading over the sidewalk and they're parked on Mill Street. But I'd like to understand that.
I'd be happy to request a circulation plan for loading and unloading from the applicant.
And is there a loading area for the office space? I didn't see it on the plans.
My understanding is that might be that freight lobby that you see there as well.
That's not the supermarket lobby, freight lobby?
I'm actually not sure. I would need to get a little bit more detail from the applicant.
Okay.
And from the development team.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll follow up.
Thank you. Commissioner Crowell?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Some of them build on what we just were discussing. I'm concerned about, I understand parking is not required, but what type of office space will that be? I'm very familiar with the area. It's a tight fit for a building this size. Understandably, parking in offices, I don't understand exactly how this new population is going to both be transported there, despite the fact that there is public transportation, which I think is inconsistent in terms of it's proximate to the subway, but it still is a major barrier to cross under the BQE and the Hamilton Street. That is a very heavily trafficked corridor and a very dangerous corridor. And I'm just trying to understand that better. And
Sure.
the tunnel traffic that comes out from the Cary Tunnel is significant there at key hours of joint transit hours.
Certainly, yeah, that's understood, and something that we've thought about. We understand that, that public transportation can be a bit scattered. It could be difficult crossing from the G&F subway line. That said, in an area like this, in reviewing kind of the application proposed to us, they haven't gone into a ton of detail about the office spaces proposed. I think the applicant was spending a little bit more time kind of confirming the community facility and the retail uses below. So I can get more detail about who they're, thinking about or what kind of specific uses they're thinking about for those office spaces. The concern is noted, though. I think in general in this area, parking is difficult, of course, and it is an unfortunate, area to traverse underneath the expressway. That said, we have spoken to DOT as well as the state DOT, so they're working on some infrastructure improvements to try to at least make it a little bit less unsafe. But returns to the initial issue, the concern about parking is noted. We'll be sure to communicate this to the applicant, make sure that they kind of have their solid rationale for why parking is not proposed to be included here.
You know how many lanes the street is? I didn't get a chance to go there over the weekend, but my recollection is it's not a wide street there.
Mill Street?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've got that here somewhere. Not there, not there. It really did, I promise you.
It might have been.
Oh, there it is, 50 feet. Yeah, so it's not, it is not a wide street.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's a really tight fit there. Okay.
Certainly.
We'll explore more.
Yeah, no, it's noted. It's very legitimate concern. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. A couple comments. One is I appreciate the clarification that you made about the project site being outside of the 1% floodplain. But when you look at the projections, this will be as soon as 2050 within the 1%. So just in general, it would be interesting to understand. I mean, this is more of a question, I think, for when we see this again, in terms of what type of provisions will be in place to secure like the uses that will be potentially inundated. But in addition to that, so like I guess my concern is really sort of the way in which we're thinking about this as compared to an MX. I appreciate also the comments that you made in terms of like the proximity of this site to other commercial and residential uses. But we could literally sort of like say the same thing, sort of like in terms of the uses that are to the south of it. With the city just announcing such an important major, I would say, milestone in terms of green jobs, literally in this area of the city, the proximity to other existing industrial uses, prompts the question of why not considering at least some mix with light industrial. And so I'm wondering if you can share with us how that conversation, has happened and what is the rationale for not mixing for mixed, not zoning for mixed industrial, commercial, or in this case, sort of like something closer to the MX, basically. It strikes me that within an IBC in this part of the city, we're not even considering that.
Well, of course, as you know, it is a manufacturing. We only have so much purview over the proposed development itself. These are conversations that we did have with the applicant, though. Certainly.
And what happened? What was the sort of like response? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, really what we did is, we examined in these situations the delta between the existing situation and what's being proposed by the applicant, right? We looked at the M11 district, which has existed for a significant amount of time. It really hasn't yielded any development, anything, whether it be industrial or otherwise, that has been particularly beneficial. And so with the M15, we talked to them and said, well, it is within the IBZ. There are industrial uses nearby. The applicant felt and continues to feel, from our understanding, that commercial development would be beneficial here and community facility development would be beneficial, particularly near the Red Hook houses, and that's something that they feel that they've heard in their conversations with community groups. We did discuss industrial uses. I know this is something that they discussed with a number of elected officials as well. And I think that's just something that they didn't come to that conclusion at that point. In terms of other districts, whether it comes to an MX or something like that, frankly, the department just didn't have that application in front of us, so we didn't really have the opportunity to study them in detail in terms of whether they would be appropriate at this specific site.
Okay, thank you. A couple quick follow-up questions. So, you know, when you, and I appreciate sort of like your explanation or the response in terms of, you know, what seems to be beneficial. I'm always sort of like, when we're rezoning away from or within sort of like an IBC, you know, the public benefit and the cost of sort of like potentially losing jobs for working class New Yorkers is in my mind sort of like an important component of, you know, who benefits from this. In that regard, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about sort of Lot 13 and Lot 18 in Block 552. My understanding is that there are some industrial uses right now inside the development side. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm trying to find specifically which one are the 13 and 18.
So,
well, 13, I know.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit what's been the conversation in terms of, you know, the displacement of these buildings, of these businesses, or directly or indirectly in terms of sort of like the impact that this can have on the southern part of this within the IBC.
Right. Understood. Yeah, this is something that the applicant, you know, obviously needed to take into account both for environmental review purposes and just for, you know, good policy, as you've noted. There are other industrial uses on the site. Some of them are kind of quasi-industrial, like that gas station on the corner.
Yeah.
And so they haven't been able to pinpoint, haven't been able to pinpoint the specific number of employees at those sites just yet, and the development potential. I think I need to look into that a little bit more, perhaps in the environmental assessment.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what prompted the question, because there is no detail in the environmental assessment, and I'm wondering if that should have been required.
Detail in terms of the
number of employees with these businesses.
I mean, definitely not my area.
Well, it got a negative declaration, and I think this would have really come out in the more detailed environmental impact assessment. But this is something that I think needs to be clarified, because again, you know, we're zoning within or rezoning within an IBC. The other question is to the chair's question. You know, I'm wondering if the department has studied how many non-conforming uses there are in this area. Not
specifically to get a solid number, but you know, just as it is throughout the city, there's certainly a significant number, particularly, you know, on this block, as we talked about.
No, thank you. Fair enough. It's just that, you know, this is something that we've discussed many times, that, you know, when there are non-conforming uses and we're looking at a situation like this, to be fair, we should know the impact of the rezoning in that regard. I mean, to what extent do we understand and do we have the data about neighborhood conditions to actually be able to make the decision? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I mean, you know, our review in this was similar to our review of any other kind of rezoning, where, you know, we examine kind of some of those uses, and while we may not have a specific number of non-conforming uses in the surrounding area necessarily, we do, you know, several site visits. We do kind of take a peek at some of the uses there, and some of those that are likely to be redeveloped or not likely to be redeveloped. And that's why, you know, in this area, you know, the application from an M11 to an M15, seeing that the M11 hasn't yielded development of industrial or otherwise, something that, you know, we think would be beneficial given the context, reviewing the application in front of us, you know, it seemed to be relatively appropriate, but that is something that we certainly take into account. And I can get more detail on.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that, and I would appreciate it specifically just because, you know, we just heard in the last cycle the South Brooklyn Industrial Development Corporation talking about sort of like the actual sort of like vacancy levels and sort of like what the market for industrial space is looking at in this particular area of the city. And also sort of like, I think I just want to stress the need to be able to gather and analyze the neighborhood conditions as a whole in this regard, so that we can have it in front of us when we're making a decision like this one.
Understood. I can get more information on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. I think my query is related to what Commissioner Osorio was just saying. And I just was wondering, how would you characterize the IBZ at this point? Is it robust? Has it lagged? I mean, and admittedly, this is on the edge of it, but nonetheless, how would you characterize the activity of the IBZ and whether or not it has attracted, industrial businesses, which was obviously the mission of the zone designation?
When it comes to the full IBZ, I may have to defer to an expert here.
Hi there. And so want to note that this area is very different than the rest of the Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone. As David noted, the areas to the south are primarily larger lots, and we've seen a lot of last mile freight changes going on there. They've really taken over some of the larger sites. But this block, we would definitely look at it as a transition between the heavier, larger industrial sites, the NYCHA housing to the west, and the mixed neighborhood of Carroll Gardens to the north. And so, there are a lot of smaller industrial uses in the Gowanus area, as well as Red Hook, IBZ to the west, in particular closer to the waterfront. But immediately to the south, like I said, there's been a transition to more last mile freight, and when you get to those larger sites.
So would you say, and I don't recall when this designation was made, but have we been successful in attracting industrial businesses into the IBZ there?
We're actually going to take a look at IBZs broadly. Based on the recent city council legislation, we're going to be looking at all industrial areas and the changes that have been happening in them. And I think we're going to do that holistically, so we can, instead of comparing one-off IBZs, we can look at them, what's been going on and changing broadly. So that's actually work that we're undertaking currently. So short answer is I don't have the numbers for this specific IBZ, but we're actually undertaking that work now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. This item is Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair.
Under the wire. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't mean to derail us, but a quick follow-up to the research that is being about to have to be carried out. We don't have that information on site. I'm shocked to hear that, for example, something like the recent M district discussion, et cetera, even associated with the city of Yes for economic opportunity would have done that. We haven't done that.
Well, we have information certainly about the IBZs as a whole, but I think when it comes to specific numbers, those are some of the things that we don't want to speak out of turn. And so the legislation that came forth that is requiring a lot of this new detail has some of that percentages, some of those numbers that we're going to look into, first of all, more updated as these things change very quickly. And second of all, just different numbers than the things that we may have been researching previously. I don't know if that sounds generally accurate, yeah.
But I'm just wondering if, given the scale of the M district proposal that is in front of the commission right now, I'm wondering if there's no more detailed research on what's happening in the IBCs that we could use in this conversation.
It's not that, we certainly know things about the IBC.
Like I said, we can come back with more details about this IBZ specifically. Again, reiterating the unique nature of this single block, I think that's what we were evaluating in terms of this specific application.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we move to certification here, I will note that Intro 1012, which was passed by the council, does require a full citywide study of IBZs and also direction from the department and the city more generally about where we want to see change, where we're seeing success, what areas are lagging. And that report is due in July of 2025, and that process will be, an active one, and obviously one which will involve the commission. And as for the tools that we're proposing in economic opportunity, obviously they also are just tools. They're not yet mapped anywhere. So those tools would be part of that analysis as to where in the city we might have reason to use them. And they've been animated by requests from manufacturing businesses themselves, which have said, and the council members and borough presidents that have said, we don't have the adequate tools here in our manufacturing district, so that's why we proposed those. So, okay, with that, we are certified on this item. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Let's move on to the next item.
The next item on our agenda is a non-ULURP referral of a previously approved special permit in Brooklyn Community District 10. Our presenter is David Weisglass.
Hello, David. How have you been?
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Second time.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I hope you're still having a good afternoon. This here is not a certification, in fact, but actually a referral of a non-ULURP modification to facilitate the construction of affordable homes for seniors in the Red Hook neighborhood. The applicant is RAHF, I don't know, that's the 4th Ivy Shore Hill LLC. This, again, is a non-ULURP modification to an existing large-scale residential development, or LSRD. The proposed development itself is a 9-story, approximately 85,000 square foot building, which is to house 137 AIRS units. AIRS units, of course, are affordable independent residences for seniors. And the proposal also includes significant improvements to landscaping and open space designs throughout the campus, which I'll go into more detail about in a bit. Here we can see the project location. It's at approximately 9000 Shore Road in Community District 10 in the Bay Ridge neighborhood. This is located in Community District 10 in Council District 47, which is the district of Council Member Justin Brannon. Here we can see the site in the neighborhood. The site is predominantly zoned R7A, with a small portion of the site zoned within an R31 district. Around the area, you can see predominantly low-density residential uses to the northeast. You can see Shore Park and Parkway to the west, and additional medium-density development along Shore Road to the south in those R7A districts that you can see on the bottom of the image here. This here is a closer image of the LSRD boundary in an aerial. You could see the boundary outlined in yellow. This is bounded by Shore Road on the west, Colonial Road on the east, and 91st Street to the south. Colonial Road, on which the proposed building will have frontage, is 80 feet wide. Directly across the street is a religious institution, Sister Visitation of Brooklyn, which includes Visitation Academy. And you can see a significant amount of open space on that campus as well. As noted, the project directly adjacent to Shore Park and Parkway, which includes ball fields, playgrounds, seating areas, and running and bike paths. In terms of public transportation, the B16 bus, which provides access to Prospect Park and Prospect Lefferts Gardens, has a stop directly adjacent to the campus on Shore Road. The X27 and X37 buses, providing access to Midtown Manhattan, also have stops directly adjacent to the campus on Shore Road. The 86th Street station, which serves the R train, is located about a half-mile northeast of the project area. This is a closer image of the campus as it exists today. Here you can see the LSRD boundaries shown in yellow, and outlined in pink is the location of the current parking lot, roughly. This is approximately where the proposed development will be constructed. You can see 3 existing buildings on the site. None of those existing 3 buildings, the 2 residential towers, nor the community facility building between them, are proposed to be demolished or altered as a part of this project. They will remain. Here I'd like to show a few images of the project site. This is an image of the existing parking lot from across Colonial Road, which is, again, 80 feet wide. This is a reminder that directly across the street from the project site, so essentially the area from which this photo is being taken, is the campus of the Sister of Visitation of Brooklyn. Bless you. This is essentially the opposite image. This is a photo of the parking lot from inside the project area facing east. So you can see that this is approximately where the proposed building will be constructed. This is a photo of the two existing Ayers buildings on the campus facing northwest from 91st Street. The area in which the proposed development will be built is not really visible in this photo, but this does show kind of the campus as it exists today. And this is essentially a reverse image. This shows the existing Ayers buildings facing northeast from the intersection of Shore Road and 91st Street, essentially from the water. The proposed development, again, will be a 9-story, approximately 85,000 square foot building, proposing 137 Ayers units, as well as improved landscaping and open space designs. This image shows a rendering of the proposal looking southwest along Colonial Road. This modification to the existing LSRD is determined to be a non-ULURP modification, as opposed to a major modification, because no additional waivers are required for the proposed development. And I'll go into detail about what that means on the next few slides. All right, so a little bit of history. In 1974, the City Planning Commission, as well as the Board of Estimate, approved an LSRD for the development of two 14-story Ayers buildings and the community center, both of which still exist, and both of which you just saw images of, and they're proposed to remain. When originally developed, the property was actually fully located within an R7-1 zoning district. And when approved, there were waivers approved as part of the LSRD for certain R7-1 regulations regarding rear yard, height and setback, and required distance between buildings, specifically those three waivers. In 1978, a small portion of the LSRD campus, which is just to the south of the proposed development area, was rezoned to R31, and that's why there's a small part of the campus site that is zoned to R31. But in 2005, the remainder of the project area and the vast majority of the property was rezoned to R7A as a part of the Bay Ridge rezoning. Again, that was in 2005. This image shows a general proposed site plan with the proposed development outlined in pink. Now, as stated, the original approval included those three waivers that I noted, waivers of regulations regarding rear yard, height and setback, and required distance between buildings. The proposed development here outlined in pink complies with all applicable zoning requirements as they exist today. No additional waivers are necessary or being sought here. And therefore, this is determined to be a non-ULURP modification. So really what this is modifying the site plan to accurately reflect what the new conditions will be. But again, the proposed development outlined in pink here does comply with all applicable zoning regulations as they exist today. This shows the proposal in much more detail. All right, so the new residential building, again outlined here in pink, will be built on the existing parking lot. 57 spaces are proposed to still be provided on the site, as seen here, but simply relocated. The existing residential buildings, as well as the community center, are to remain. And I'd like to go into a little bit of detail about the overall campus improvements, particularly to the public areas. The courtyards shown here are proposed to be improved and would include landscaped areas and a range of seating types that includes ADA accessible seating for use by the residents. The new building would create a street wall presence along Colonial Road. The site perimeter would include planted buffers, and additionally, overall site circulation is proposed to be improved with clear paths and delineation between vehicles and pedestrians to improve safety. Paving strategies akin to shared streets, which we found successful elsewhere, would be incorporated in certain areas for enhanced safety. A little bit of more detail here. So ZR Section 78.312 permits the City Planning Commission to grant waivers of certain zoning regulations in accordance with a large-scale residential development. Again, in 1974, it received three waivers: rear yard, height and setback, and regulations regarding required distance between buildings. As noted, no additional waivers are required. In fact, due to the fact that the site is now zoned to R7A rather than R7-1, one fewer waiver is required in the rear yard. For approval, the CPC must find that the modified site plan continues to meet the findings made in 1974. The applicant has stated that the project does continue to meet these findings and has submitted documentation outlining how they believe these findings are met in the application. Now, this proposal also required a Board of Standards and Appeals action, right? So in 2016, as a part of the Zoning for Quality and Affordability Text Amendment, or ZQA, ZR Section 73-434 was introduced. This section allows the BSA to permit the reduction of off-street parking required for income-restricted housing, so long as the board is able to make the necessary findings outlined in that section. The applicant was granted approval of this application by the BSA on August 7th, 2023. This application represents the first utilization of this new ZR section that was introduced in 2016. As such, while 112 parking spaces were originally approved as a part of the LSRD, the requirement, thanks to the BSA action, is now being reduced to 56. And the applicant, to my understanding, proposes 57 parking spaces, so one more there. Would like to note that the original LSRD noted the provision of 112 parking spaces. Only 73 were built and 73 exist today. It's our conclusion that a lower number of parking spaces were provided, as the provision of 112 spaces would result in an unsafe and inefficient layout for the campus. It's also important to note that these are parking spaces for the existing development, right, and the two existing AIRS buildings. No parking is required for the new development, as the zoning resolution permits applicants to waive all parking if 15 or fewer spaces are required. Only 14 spaces are required here through the calculations, and so the reduction in parking is only for the existing building. The applicant, as part of the BSA application process, conducted a number of studies to determine the utilization of the existing parking area and found that 56 spaces would be adequate. In summary, the applicant is seeking a non-ULURP modification to the existing LSRD to facilitate a 9-story, 85,000 square foot building to include 137 new affordable homes for seniors. In addition, the proposal includes noted increases to open space and overall site plan improvements. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. There's both a lot going on here, but also not that much that is actually pending before the commission. Is that a fair statement?
That's a great summary.
Okay. So I think it's an interesting proposal and mostly a ministerial question here. But let me see if there are questions or clarifications or anything. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yeah. Despite my few months on the commission, I still don't. Why did they go to BSA rather than CPC for the parking reduction?
Well, they needed to do both in some order, basically.
Yeah.
So the BSA action allowed them to reduce the parking requirement for the existing building so long as that actual physical geographical parking area is replaced with another AIRS building. Right. So it's specifically for this action. If they were to come here simply to modify the site plan, it would still not be legitimate because they wouldn't, the modification to the parking for the existing buildings, we could have memorialized it on the updated site plan, but it wouldn't actually have been legal because they still would have had the higher number of required parking spaces. So the BSA action allows them to reduce the number of parking spaces. Yeah,
and I'll just also clarify that the BSA action was created during Zoning for Quality and Affordability to facilitate this type of development. It just so happens that there was an existing large scale that had to be modified in conjunction. So theoretically, without the large scale, they should have and could have just gone to the BSA, and it was just the 1974 action that they're actually modifying.
And going to the BSA provides a quicker resolution or response?
It's not really that it's a quicker resolution, it's just the correct one. They had a required number of parking spaces that was kind of memorialized for those existing buildings, and to my understanding, updating that without the required site plan wouldn't work. Now, it's also my understanding per the zoning section that they could have eliminated, there's no specific number of parking spaces that need to remain after the BSA action. However, 56 parking spaces would be required today under the R7A.
Right.
But again, because it's in the large scale, we kind of need to memorialize that in the site plan. That sound accurate?
And I'll just reiterate, there is no currently other action available to them to reduce the parking for the existing site. And so the BSA is the correct avenue for them to go through this. And again, it was created during ZQA for this specific purpose.
And just to further clarify that point about ZQA and modification on a development like this, it is if you are looking to replace your parking with an heirs building, you may, through the BSA, and it's defined, so long as you put the parking lot somewhere else, or you don't even need to under that action. Nothing. So you just can replace parking with heirs building through BSA, enabled through ZQA. Correct? Okay. And then once they have done that, because they're in a large-scale plan from 1974, that's why they have to come to us. And the question then is this still consistent with the overall good site plan that was the findings from 1974? Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
And the findings focus a lot on improved site plan, which is why we took into account much more than simply the proposed building, and we, went into a deep dive on how we can improve the rest of the campus as well.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, this would be, the next step here would be to refer this one out to the community board for 45 days, and then it'll be back to us for a hearing. So unless there's further questions, we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll look forward to picking it up on the next round. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Okay, the fourth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a business improvement district in Brooklyn, Community District 5. Our presenter is Alex Plakis.
All right, welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Alex Plakis. I'm with the Economic Development and Regional Planning Division, and I'd like to present you the formation of Cypress Hill Fulton Bid Business Improvement District. This is an application by the Department of Small Business Services. The Business Improvement District, BID for short, is centered around Fulton Street in the Cypress Hills neighborhood of Brooklyn. There are currently 76 bids in the city, and 23 are located in Brooklyn. This is a culturally vibrant neighborhood, and in the proposed bid boundary, there are 325 businesses. So the proposed change, currently there is no bid. The proposed change would be that a bid is now present and providing supplementary services to those provided by the city. As you can see, it's along Fulton Street, north of Atlantic Avenue, and south of Highland Park.
Can I pause you for 1 second and see if we can activate this screen over here as well? Great. Thank you.
Would you like me to go back one?
You're fine. You're okay.
Okay. So the estimated first-year budget of the new bid would be $400,000, with the table on the right of the screen breaking down the services of the proposed budget. This would include sanitation, public safety, marketing and events, streetscape improvements and repairs, among other services. The primary funding comes from an assessment on commercial and mixed-use lots, and those will be assessed depending on the commercial square feet and length of the property facing the street. There will also be a corner lot fee assessed as well of $150. Residential lots will be assessed at $1 per year, and government and not-for-profit owned properties will not have an assessment. This leads to the median assessment being $669 per year. In public review, Community Board 5 has submitted a vote to approve the formation of the bid, and I'd like to also refer you all to a new briefing package that would include the Brooklyn Borough President's recommendation, which was a vote in favor of the formation of the bid. you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Benjamin?
We had two bids on this time, the Cypress Hills and the Long Island City, and I'm just wondering about one portion of each of their proposed budgets. The Long Island City bid is much larger than the Cypress Hills, but the administration expenses in the budget are greater for Cypress Hills than for Long Island City. Not by much, but it's a little odd, and I'm wondering how they and why that is.
Yeah, so I'd have to refer to the bid to explain what is included in the administration. I would also like to note that I broke down, and this is jumping ahead to the next one, but there were 3 separate budgets in the Long Island City.
Right, I added them all together.
Yeah. So
in terms of the administrative costs.
I defer to the bid to explain what.
Yeah, the Cypress Hill bid was $160, I believe, for administrative, which is almost a third of their budget. The second largest item, I believe, was sanitation services, and the Long Island City was $159,000 for the 3 of them combined.
Yeah, I am unsure exactly what's included in their administration and whether that's,
But if you could find out for us why and how that is, I'm just concerned about how the bid is allocating their money and expenses. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we will have a public hearing on this item on Wednesday, and perhaps we should move on to the next bid item on our agenda.
The 5th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review for a business improvement district expansion in Queens Community Districts 1 and 2. Our presenter again is Alex Placas.
All right.
So, I'd like to present you all the expansion of the Long Island City Business Improvement District. The bid area is located in Queens' Long Island City neighborhood. It's a commercially vibrant mixed-use area with 500 businesses within the existing bid boundary. The existing condition, 1 bid with 2 sub-districts, a north and a south sub-district. The proposed change would be 1 bid with 3 sub-districts, a north, a south, and a new services included in an eastern sub-district, which was south of Sunnyside Yards. So the estimated total first-year budget of the bid would be just over $2 million, with the table here breaking down the services of the proposed budget for each sub-district. The funding primarily comes from an assessment on in the north and south sub-districts, Class A and B commercial and mixed-use properties, assessed based on assessed value of the building and the full square footage. In the east sub-district, Class A properties will be assessed based on the square footage, with 50% of the total assessments in the east sub-district being paid by the 20 largest buildings. Throughout the bid, in all 3 sub-districts, residential lots will once again be assessed at $1 per year, and government and not-for-profit owned properties will not have an assessment. The median assessment of the north and south sub-districts would be $620 and $443 respectively. The median assessment for the east sub-district would be just over $3,000, and the median for all 3 sub-districts is $701 per year. Public review. Statements of support for the bid, 72% and 64% of assessed value of properties in the east and west expansion areas, respectively, support the proposal. Community Board 1 has submitted a recommendation to approve the expansion. We have not yet received a recommendation from Community Board 2. Their public hearing is on March 7th. And I'd also like to update you all that the borough president has submitted a recommendation in favor of expanding the bid, and that is in an updated briefing package. And I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And I think most of my questions I can pose to SBS on Wednesday. But one of them is, and you may know the answer to it already, and if not, we'll just punt till Wednesday, is are there other bids which have these sorts of subset parts with a north, south, east, west sort of thing? I guess there may be. So, all right. So you give it a whirl, and then we'll ask the bid on the commission. Go ahead.
Yes, there are other districts, other bids with sub-districts. I can't say how many have a breakdown like that, but there are some that have that kind of.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Tell me what I need to know.
No. It's a great question. I don't know how many others myself, but in the Grand Central, the original district, which was created in '88, was then amended in 1992, which added the southern portion of Fifth Avenue and up north on Park Avenue. Those are called the amended areas. We're not calling them subsects or whatever the terminology is now, but there's a different assessment rate in those parts of, based upon the negotiated, what the community wanted there and what they didn't want. At this point in time, everybody has everything, but in the growing part of the district, that's how it was done. It was two different pieces, so I have a bifurcated assessment process.
Interesting. Thank you. Vice Chair Knuckles.
No, I would only observe. I think that's a good approach, because I can think of at least one area where there's one street, long street, and where there's an existing bid and there's a desire to have a bid for, in this case, the eastern portion of the street. And I think a sub-district under the auspices of the current bid would be arguably more efficient than having two bids covering, one artery.
Look, to the public, it should all be invisible. That the experience should be invisible without understanding this side of the street is that sector and this side of the street is another. But administratively, it's work. But they've gone through a long process with their stakeholders to develop this plan. So we have to, in some way, trust that what they're putting forward in terms of the structure of this makes sense for them.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. Okay, we'll pick this up on Wednesday. Thank you for the prep.
The sixth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review for a site selection and acquisition in Queens Community District 2. Our presenter is Bree Mejia. Bree, you should be able to unmute. We don't hear you in the hearing room yet.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Next slide, please. Okay, this is an application submitted by the New York City Department of Transportation and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for site selection and acquisition to address their expanding needs. DOT currently has a temporary license agreement at this site. They are using a portion of their parking lot and building overall for storage and operations. And just as a reminder, this application was certified on November 13th of last year. Next slide, please. Okay, as mentioned, DOT is seeking a site selection and acquisition. This is mainly to expand their programs in their SIM, sidewalk and inspection management, and their traffic operation units currently operating throughout New York City. Additionally, one of their operations in Queens needs to be relocated due to DEP's ongoing construction of water tunnel number 3, which is taking place beneath DOT's traffic operation site. On the map to the left, the existing locations are depicted by the blue circles and the project area is depicted by the red circle. Next slide, please. Okay, and this image is depicting the project site facing south from 47th Avenue. DOT intends to use the ground and mezzanine floors and their surface parking lot of this existing 4-story building. In this image, you can also see on the left-hand side what is typical in this area, which are 2 to 3 story warehouses. These were originally built in the 1930s. Next slide, please. Okay, on February 1st of this year, Queens Community Board 2 voted 28 in favor, 0 against, and 2 abstaining, the recommendation of approval. On that same day, the Queensborough president held a public hearing for this application. And on February 16th, the Queensborough president recommended approval of this application. And with this, I conclude my presentation, and I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. Just a quick follow-up. I remember that when we certified this, there was a conversation about existing industrial businesses on site. And I remember that there was sort of like a pending clarification in terms of, or a confirmation in terms of how many industrial businesses are there right now, and whether or not there's a plan to relocate them, or what is sort of like generally speaking the plan.
Correct. I was able to share information with the applicant team, and they will be confirming this with you at the public hearing. But to my knowledge, and they will follow up, they will not be displaced. The current businesses will remain in place. And so there's no fear of them having to relocate somewhere else.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to pick this up on Wednesday. Thank you, Bree.
Thank you so much.
The 7th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property and an acquisition in the Bronx Community District 3. Our presenter is Yafit Shafar-Sol.
All right, Yafit, welcome.
Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about the Melrose Concourse Neighborhood Construction Program, the second NCP that I've brought to you now in the past couple weeks. The applicant, which is HPD, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, requests an Urban Development Action Area project, UDAP designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, and an acquisition to facilitate the construction and development of 3 new residential buildings with a total of approximately 71 affordable housing units plus 1 superintendent unit. 23 of the 71 affordable units will be designated as affordable independent residences for seniors, also known as AIRS units, and 8 of the 71 affordable units will be set aside for formerly homeless individuals. The proposed developments will be situated on the following sites: 404 Claremont Parkway, 1169 Washington Avenue, and 12 Governor Place. These sites are within the Claremont and Morrisania neighborhoods in Bronx Community District 3. The area surrounding Development Site 1 is characterized largely by public institutions, industrial and manufacturing uses, as well as many residential multifamily buildings, parks, and open space. Prevalent uses in the surrounding area around Development Sites 2 and 3 are mixed and include industrial and manufacturing, public facilities, residential uses, and mixed residential and commercial buildings, as well as commercial and office buildings. There are also several privately owned vacant lots within the area, and some of which are used as parking lots. As you can see on this map, there are many open and recreational spaces in the project area, including the 37-acre Claremont Park, the 125-acre Crotona Park, and many smaller parks and playgrounds scattered about. Noteworthy public facilities and institutions in the area include several houses of worship, a dialysis center, and many schools. The project area is well served by public transit. The B and D subway lines are located close to the development sites, with the 170th Street stop closest to Development Site 1 and the 167th Street closest to Development Sites 2 and 3. The 4th subway line generally runs parallel to the BD line in this area and is located 2 blocks east of the BD subway line. There are also multiple buses that serve this area. Bus lines close to Development Site 1 include the BX41 SBS, which runs northwest on Webster Avenue, and BX11, which runs east-west on Claremont Parkway. Bus lines close to Development Site 2 and 3 include BX35, which runs east-west on East 168th Street, and BX15, which runs north-south on 3rd Avenue. 404 Claremont Parkway, the proposed development site for Site 1, is a new 4-story building containing approximately 8 units of affordable housing and approximately 6,400 square feet of residential floor area with a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units. The proposed unit breakdown for this building includes 2 1-bedroom units and 6 2-bedroom units. The proposed building will include a rear yard, rooftop terrace, and an on-site laundry room. 1169 Washington Avenue, the proposed development for Site 2, is a new 9-story building containing approximately 34 units of affordable housing with approximately 28,000 square feet of residential floor area. HPD intends to set aside 12 of the 34 affordable dwelling units for heirs, and 8 of the units in the building will be reserved for formerly homeless. The proposed unit breakdown for this site includes 12 studios, 14 1-bedroom units, and 8 2-bedroom units. The proposed building will include approximately 1,300 square feet of landscape rear yard, bicycle storage, on-site laundry room, and approximately 400 feet of office space for the residents. 12 Governor Place, the proposed development site for Development 3, is a new 9-story building containing approximately 30 units of affordable housing with 24,000 square feet of residential floor area. HB intends to set aside 11 of the 30 affordable units for heirs, and the proposed unit breakdown for this building includes 7 studios, 16 1-bedroom units, and 6 2-bedroom units. One of these 2-bedroom units will be dedicated to the super. And the proposed building will include about 1,600 square feet of open space for residents. The Commission certified this project on November 27th, 2023, and on January 23rd, CB3 held a public hearing and submitted a favorable recommendation on January 28th. The vote was 14 in favor, 5 against, and 7 abstained. The Bronx Borough President held a public hearing for the project on February 6th and voted in favor with modifications. The CPC public hearing is scheduled for March 6th. Just like the Borough President called out on the East Tremont Cluster NCP recommendations, the Borough President expressed concern over unit sizes, particularly the small size of the studios. BP recommends that HPD count units based on the number of bedrooms provided, a note that was also in the last NCP recommendation. And the BP urged applicants to consider combining studios to create larger unit sizes to support a wider range of families, particularly in development sites 2 and 3. In addition, because the BP strongly believes that NYCHA residents do not currently receive sufficient opportunities and that the youth need better support in order for them to gain valuable job training, the borough president decided to also recommend that the applicant team coordinate construction activities with the neighboring Carl C. Icahn Charter School for the 404 Claremont site, ensuring that development does not create any hardships for the school. Here are 3 summary tables if you'd like to explore the project details a bit further. Table 1 lists out the approximate size of each unit type, as well as the distribution of heirs and non-heirs units. And Table 2 describes the number of units that will be available at each AMI level. And Table 3 summarizes the breakdown of unit size, heirs versus non-heirs per unit site. This completes my presentation. Thanks for your time, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Look at that. No questions. All good. Thank you very much. So we will pick this up on Wednesday. And we appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the 8th item on our agenda is a non-ULERT post-referral in Manhattan Community District 8. This is a private application for a transit easement joint certification from the CPC and the MTA to determine if a transit easement volume is required. The MTA has determined that an easement would not be required at this location. Also, Manhattan Community Board 8 has waived the recommendation. Both the letter from the MTA and the waiver from the Community Board were included in your materials. Ali Sung is here for questions, should there be any.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions on this one? Pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. Seek assent by voice vote to send an approval letter to the Buildings Department. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That motion carries.
Okay. The 9th item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for the 230 Kent Avenue rezoning in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Lucia Marquez-Reagan.
Hi there. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, Chair Grodnick and Commissioners. 230 Kent is returning before you for a City Council modification scope determination. 230 Kent Avenue was certified by the City Planning Commission on August 21st, 2023, and voted on by the Commission on December 13th, 2023. The proposed actions are a zoning map amendment from an M14 to an M14R7X, also an MX8 district, and a zoning text amendment to amend Section 12363 of the zoning resolution to add R7X as a residential pairing for an MX8 district, and to Appendix F to map MIH coterminous with the project area. These actions are to facilitate the development of a new 8-story residential and commercial building with 40 dwelling units, 12 of which would be income restricted, with approximately 3,300 square feet of ground floor commercial in the Greenpoint neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 1. The City Council is proposing modification to the project area boundaries. The application, as proposed by the applicant, is to rezone the entirety of Block 2362, approximately 18,400 square feet, and is bounded by North 1st Street to the south, River Street to the west, Metropolitan Avenue to the north, and Kent Avenue to the east, from again an M14 to an M14R7X, MX8 mixed-use district. The City Council modification is to reduce the project area by about 70%, or approximately 12,500 square feet, to an area bounded by a line 120 feet southwesterly of Metropolitan Avenue, bounded by Kent Avenue, North 1st Street, and River Street. The area removed from the project area is currently in an M14 district and would remain so under the City Council modification. An M14 district does not allow residential uses. The City Council modification also alters the proposed MIH map to be coterminous with the project area boundary, reduced down to the development site, and mapping only MIH option 1. The lot removed from the project area, lot 3, which is currently vacant and has been since 2018, was projected development site listed in the environmental assessment statement, with the potential to create, under MIH option 2, 82 units, 25 income restricted with the mapped MIH area. Residential uses are currently, again, not allowed under an M14 district, and upon removal of the lot will continue to not be allowed under this district. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions here?
Rationale, if any?
The question is, does the council express any rationale to their making these amendments?
I don't believe so.
Other questions?
District is it in?
This is in
Community District 1.
You mean council district?
Yeah.
Ressler, Councilman Ressler. Okay, so we have a scope determination question. All right, and I think there's no very little question here. This one is in scope. At least from the department, so the commission gets to make that call. I'd like to seek assent by voice vote to send a letter to the council. The modifications here are within scope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay. Future votes. For Wednesday, March 4th, staff have prepared reports for East Tremont Cluster NCP, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. Yafit is here to present a department recommendation.
So the Bronx Borough Office recommends to approve this application. This was brought to you around the same time. And anything else? Great.
That's it. It's a recommendation. Great. We got it. Thank you very much. No other questions. Great. Thank you. All right. Let's move on.
Okay. Also, staff have prepared reports for 396 400 Avenue X rezoning, which we had a public hearing for on the 7th of February, and we had a staff recommendation at the last public review session. Regarding 341 10th Street rezoning and LSGD special permits, in your weekend materials was a letter from the applicants, and Emily Bachman is here to present. Thank you.
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Chair Grodnick and Commissioners. I will get started while the presentation comes up. This is the post-hearing follow-up and staff recommendation for 341 10th Street, a private application from Stellar 341 LLC for a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, and special permits in the Park Slope neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 6. This application was certified on October 2nd of last year. The public hearing was held on January 24th, and the vote is scheduled for this coming Wednesday, March 6th. The department supports this application, which would facilitate the development of 305 residential units, 162 of which are proposed to be income restricted. The proposed R73 and R73 C24 zones and accompanying special permits will allow uses and bulk that are consistent with the mixed-use character of the neighborhood and that are appropriate given the site's adjacency to wide streets, access to transit and services, and proximity to other higher density districts. These actions will also bring the existing building into compliance while allowing for flexible design of infill development that activates underutilized portions of the lot, improves the development's relationship to the street, and provides much-needed housing, neighborhood services, community facility amenities, and open space to current and future residents. During post-hearing follow-up at the February 5th review session, the department noted that the applicant would not be able to mix and match the MIH workforce option and option 1 in the way they initially proposed. And because multiple MIH options cannot be combined on a single zoning lot within a large-scale general development, and the workforce option precludes the use of public funding. To facilitate the proposed development, the department recommends modification of the proposed MIH boundaries to create 2 mutually exclusive MIH areas
with the workforce option and option 2 limited to the 10th Street building site, and option 1 covering the remainder of the site, including the existing building and the proposed 9th Street building site. In summary, the department supports this application, which we see as an opportunity for increased density, affordable housing production in a high opportunity neighborhood with excellent access to transit and services, and where land use policies have historically restricted development. And we support modification of the MIH boundaries to facilitate the proposed development. That concludes the recommendation. Happy to take questions.
Great, thank you. Good, all right, thank you very much. Thanks, Emily.
Okay, staff have also prepared reports for 3011 12th Street rezoning, 2301 Steinway Street rezoning, and Willards Point Phase 2. For Willards Point Phase 2, there was a memo in your weekend materials along with testimonies. Okay. Also for consideration on Wednesday is Fort Totten Electrical Infrastructure SNAD, which is 2 SNAD authorizations in Queens Community District 7. Also 27 Wetmore, which is a special hillsides authorization in Staten Island Community District 1. Okay. Staff have prepared reports, a report for 900 South Avenue, Staten Island Community Board 2 office space, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. Oliver Vega is here to present a department recommendation on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Grodnick. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. The Department of City Planning staff supports the applicant's proposal to acquire approximately 1,063 square feet of office space on the 3rd floor of a 4-story building at 900 South Avenue for Staten Island's Community Board 2, CB2 through a 195 Notice of Intent to Acquire Office Space of the New York City Charter. The acquisition is appropriate because CB2's district office has been located at 900 South Avenue for the past 5 years since November 2018. The site meets all fair share criteria and has been adequately meeting the community board's needs. DCAS is seeking a long-term lease on behalf of CB2 to secure its occupancy in place. A CPC report reflecting the recommendation has been prepared for the commission. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Oliver.
Okay. Lastly, staff have prepared reports on City of Yes for Economic Opportunity and the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity M District zoning text amendments. Okay. Post-hearing follow-ups. Okay. For post-hearing follow-ups, we have 8001 Broadway Commercial Overlay, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. We are joined by Connie Chan to present on Zoom.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Department of City Planning staff supports the applicant's proposal to amend the zoning map to establish a C24 commercial overlay. While the applicant does not currently have plans to redevelop the project area, the establishment of the C24 overlay would bring existing non-conforming commercial uses in the project area, which have been operating since the 1920s, into conformance and would provide the applicant with flexibility around future tenants. It would also reinforce the mixed-use character of Broadway, as well as the continuity of commercial overlays that are currently mapped north and south of the project area. A CPC report reflecting this recommendation has been prepared for the Commission. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Connie.
Okay. Next, we have 9722 Crestkill Place disposition, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. We are joined by Shantae Lee to present on Zoom.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Grodnick. The Department of City Planning staff supports the applicant's proposal to dispose of the former DSNY section station property, which has been unusable due to damages to the interior structure from flooding. The proposed disposition would give the city flexibility and authority to determine the best way to reactivate and improve the site. I am happy to take any questions.
Great. I think we're set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have 7 Northmore Street, a DCAS disposition, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. We are joined by Trevor Lovitz to present.
Great. Hi, Trevor.
Hi, Chair Grodnick, hello, Commissioners. The proposed disposition of city-owned property at 7 Northmore Street is scheduled for a March 20th vote. The public hearing took place on Wednesday, February 21st. The property at 7 North Moore is a 3-story vacant structure on an approximately 1,400 square foot lot that was built in 1939 and used as a section station by the DSNY until the facility was permanently vacated in 2017. DSNY had considered repurposing the 7 North Moore Street building for other DSNY operational functions, but the anticipated high redevelopment cost for this relatively small property has deterred the agency from moving forward with a plan for reuse. Department staff recommend approval of the requested disposition action, which would give DCAS the flexibility and authority to dispose of the site in the future. The significant site constraints, in particular the small lot size coupled with restrictive zoning envelope, make affordable housing development difficult at this location, with the potential to produce only a few units at a high cost. Given the poor state of repair at this existing improvement, multiple city agencies would need to commit significant resources in order to repurpose the site for an alternative city facility use. To echo the Manhattan Borough President, this comes at a time when there are multiple competing priorities to address the city's varied needs. For these reasons, department staff recommend approval of this disposition action. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Trevor.
Next, we have 1521 West 124th Street, which had a public hearing at the February 7th public meeting. Trevor is presenting this item as well.
Thank you, sir. This private application, a proposed text amendment to the zoning resolution, which would allow an otherwise as-of-right residential development located at 1521 West 124th Street to waive required parking, is scheduled to be voted on March 20th. The public hearing took place on Wednesday, February 7th. At the public hearing, Vice Chair Knuckles requested additional information on potential impacts on the neighboring Harlem Library, which the applicant detailed in a follow-up memo, which I hope you received okay. Department staff recommend the proposed text amendment, which would make the more liberal parking regulations of R72 districts applicable to 3 unique R6A districts within the special 125th Street district. These modified requirements would make accessory off-street parking requirements for the applicant's 33-unit residential development such that they may be reduced altogether. Although off-street parking is not required for residential developments in the Manhattan core defined as encompassing community districts 1 through 8, parking requirements still apply in Upper Manhattan. Department staff believe that existing parking requirements do not adequately reflect the broad array of public transit options in that geography. Furthermore, the proposed zoning text aligns with the broader direction of city policy as seen in the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposal, in which the elimination of parking requirements is being contemplated for new residential developments or enlargement citywide to further the city's housing objectives. Finally, the department staff believes this to be a particularly inappropriate location for a new curb cut, which would be necessitated by off-street parking, given the development site's location adjacent to the Harlem Library and opposite the children's playground within Marcus Garvey Park. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have 281-311 Marcus Garvey Boulevard, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. There was a letter from the applicants in your weekend materials. We are joined by Jonah Rogoff to present.
Good afternoon, Chair Grodnick and Commissioners. While this is being pulled up, I'll just say this is a staff recommendation for 281 and 311 Marcus Garvey Boulevard, a private application from Omni New York LLC for a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, and 2 CPC special permits in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 3. This application was certified on October 30th of last year. A public hearing was held on February 21st, and the vote scheduled for March 20th. The department recommends approval of this application, which would facilitate the development of 155 dwelling units, all of which are proposed to be income restricted, along with ground floor commercial and community facility space. The department believes that the proposed R7A C24 zoning district and accompanying special permits are appropriate given the location along a north-south corridor of Marcus Garvey Boulevard, as well as the proximity to public transit and services and alignment with other mid-density zoning districts nearby. Further, these actions will help facilitate a project that provides much-needed affordable housing. Again, the developer is agreeing to an ELA term sheets and that they've been in discussion with HPD for, as well as active ground floor uses and publicly accessible open space, as well as improvements to open space that's private in the development. Regarding the special permit for the large-scale general development, the department believes that this action is appropriate and results in a superior site plan with a building envelope that remains contextual and consistent with zoning districts mapped elsewhere in the neighborhood, as well as help codify on-site open space, landscape courtyards, and widen sidewalks that improve the development's relationship with both nearby buildings, but also with the street. And then finally, with respect to the special permit to reduce parking accessory to the existing buildings, reducing it from 234 required to 118 required spaces, the department is also supportive of this action as it would enable the development to be constructed in a more cost-effective manner and minimize conflicts with ground floor uses. And then in a memo, as a follow-up to the commission submitted in Friday's package, the applicant team also confirmed that the project will retain the existing 118 parking spaces at the Betty Shabazz and Medgraver's apartments. Those are the existing apartments on the site, and that these spaces are slightly underutilized with a vacancy rate of 8%. So the applicant believes that the amount of parking that they're maintaining is sufficient for the existing population. And that I'm happy to respond, but thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonah. Very useful. Quick question. Are you satisfied with the response from the applicant in terms of the energy efficiency of the buildings?
We are. I would say that they did provide sufficient information at the public hearing. We're also aware of other projects in the track record from the applicant team, now called past development. So based on the information they provided and other projects they've worked on, we feel that this is adequate. And I would also just note that a lot of the some of the energy efficiency and sustainability speaks to the open space that they're providing to an extent. So, but happy to follow up again.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Just to confirm, did they submit any additional information in writing in that regard?
Not in writing. That was their memo was focused on the parking.
Yeah.
We can certainly ask them, but I would say that the large-scale general development does include a set of drawings for the open space, so that is part of the application.
No, thank you. Thank you. If you can inquire about the buildings specifically, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Thanks so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thanks, Jonah.
Next, we have 1289 Atlantic Avenue rezoning, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. In your weekend materials was a letter from the applicants, and we are joined by Ina Gusenfeld to present.
Hello, Ina.
Hello, good afternoon. Okay. This application is called 1289 Atlantic Avenue rezoning. It was certified on October 30th, 2023. It had its public hearing on February 21st, 2024, and it will be voted on March 20th, 2024. The department supports the proposed actions, which consist of a zoning map amendment to change the project area from M11 to C45X and R6B districts, which would involve eliminating manufacturing zoning on the subject block, and the related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map an MIH area coterminous with the project area. The department believes the proposed C45X district is appropriate here, given the unusual depth of the block, the corner location, the proximity to transit, including the Nostrand Avenue Long Island Railroad, which is directly adjacent, and the A and C trains 2 blocks north on Fulton Street, the extensive frontage along Atlantic Avenue, and the proximity to the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan project area, and consistency with the AMUP framework. Community Board 3 recommended conditional approval, which was affirmed by the Borough President in his recommendation. The applicant representative has provided a letter addressed to the chair in response to questions raised at the February 21st public meeting, primarily regarding design and noise issues related to construction on the site.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have 817 Avenue H rezoning, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting. Hanif Yassi is here to present.
Hanif.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi, this application was certified on November 1st. The public hearing was held on February 21st, and the vote is scheduled for March 20th. The department supports the application, which would facilitate the development of a new 8-story mixed-use building with 42 dwelling units, which 11 would be permanently income restricted at 817 Avenue H. The change in the zoning district to R7A C24 along the full Avenue H frontage aims to address the development potential of the area in line with its current needs. The zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH ensures that future developments in the project area will include the necessary provision of income restricted housing, 11 in this case. Flanked on either side by Ocean Parkway to the west and Coney Island Avenue to the east, the two major arterial roads, 2 blocks in either direction. The project area is located along Avenue H, which is a 80-foot wide street between East 8th and 9th Streets, both of them 60-foot wide streets. The project area enjoys access to several bus and subway lines. Approximately 1/3 of a mile east of the project area is the Avenue H station, served by the Q. The 18th Avenue and Avenue I station, served by the F line, are located approximately 1/2 mile to the west of the project area. The proposed development plans to fully utilize the available 4.6 FAR, along with commercial spaces amounting to around 15,000 square feet. The inclusion of 20 off-street parking spaces in the proposed cellar is a voluntary decision in line with the project's vision. Thank you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Regarding 41 Richard Street, which had a public hearing at the February 21st public meeting, Emily will join us at the next review session on March 18th to do a department recommendation. But if there are any questions for now, please let us know. Okay. Next, we have Seeker Type 2 rule change, the CAPA, Green Fast Track. I'll just note that this will be laid over from the report section for this Wednesday. In your weekend materials was a memo and testimonies. Alexandra Moskowitz is here to present.
All right. Hi, Alex.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. So today I'll give you an update on the Green Fast Track for Housing rulemaking. The public comment period has now closed. We're going to review the feedback that we received to date since we last came before the commission. The proposal will come to you before you for a vote on the 20th of this month, after which the rule would be published again. We are planning for an effective date at the beginning of June, which would allow for all agencies to be on the same timeline for implementation. First, we wanted to respond to questions from the commission regarding the process for Type 2 eligibility determination. We have proposed thresholds pertaining to the size of a project, along with standard checks of certain site conditions and necessary commitments. With this set of criteria, all categories of potential impacts for small and medium-sized housing developments could be avoided without the need for additional review of a proposal's density characteristics. These thresholds were vetted by all partner agencies and agreed upon. Projects would no longer require environmental review for these density-based impacts, and review by agencies like DOT and Parks would not be warranted. No project that meets the proposed criteria would have the potential for environmental impacts. Overall, there have also been questions about whether we could use this green fast track to incentivize development that may be seen as more desirable. The proposed criteria are designed to fast track all projects that would not have environmental impacts and to avoid fast tracking projects that could have impacts. Because the potential environmental impacts under seeker do not vary depending on the desirability of a project, we cannot draw that distinction. We also want to clear up a misperception about the level of review for projects that are green fast track eligible. In order to make this type 2 determination, there will still be agency involvement. Lead agencies such as DCP will still need to agree upon the proposed actions and the development scenario proposed by the applicant. Much of the eligibility criteria would be automatically checked through a tool being designed by DCP, including size and location criteria. But air quality and noise submissions will need a standard check from DCP staff. DEP and OER will need to review a Phase 1 hazardous materials report as they do today and agree upon e-designation language if it is necessary. LPC will need to sign off on historic resources in the area, and a preliminary check only takes a short period of time. On occasion, an applicant will need sign off from DEC, which is typical process for projects with natural resources concerns. However, these checks are objective and do take far less time than the multitude of agency review involved in an EAS. Apologies. Now to review and respond to additional comments that we have heard from the public. We heard support from the proposal from many commenters that they value that it would streamline the process and speed up approvals, leading to faster production of needed housing while using fewer taxpayer dollars to do so. We have heard some recommendations as well, that we should exclude projects in the current and future floodplain, which we disagree with because it is not tied to the possibility of environmental impact for projects that meet these density criteria due to robust floodplain policies outside of environmental review. The city requires projects to meet certain requirements, include adaptive measures, and to protect natural resources through citywide and state policy. We have heard that we should not exclude projects in commercial districts that enable housing through special permits. We took a look at the projects in the past 10 years in commercial districts that facilitated housing without a rezoning. They are very small in number and most would not fit the eligibility requirements. Therefore, we don't feel that there's strong support for a rule change at this time. We have heard some requests for clarifications. We heard questions about how the rulemaking will account for cumulative impacts and infrastructure issues without an EAS. As we've discussed, regardless of the conditions of the surrounding neighborhood, now or in the future, the projects that would be eligible for the Green Fast Track are induced too small of a change to be able to identify impacts in any density category. These projects do not result in issues for their surrounding communities, and infrastructure planning for growing neighborhoods will continue to be undertaken by the capital planning processes within each agency. We have also heard some opposition. We heard some comments about the process for this rulemaking and opportunities for public feedback into proposals in the future. The proposal has followed all of the requirements of the City Administrative Procedure Act process, including notifying all community boards, and went beyond the requirements of CAPA for outreach. Furthermore, this proposal would not change the public review process, and all members of the public would still have access to the due diligence conducted by the department and documentation of commitments and eligibility backup. We heard that this rulemaking would incentivize out-of-scale development. However, this proposal would not change the zoning or land use approvals process, which guide development. We also heard that the proposed rule will impact resources such as historic districts, open space, natural resources, and noise conditions. So this, we would point to the eligibility criteria that work to exclude projects that may have impacts in these areas, and that this proposal would not change various city and state laws, such as those around historic resources or parkland alienation. We have also heard that developers will falsify data and that there will be segmentation of projects. This proposal does not change the conditions of requesting actions from the city. The lead agency will still establish the required actions for a proposal, decide upon the scope of the review, the project area, and potential development and segmentation will continue to be prohibited by law. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the Commission at this time.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your work on this. This is truly impressive. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much for such a thorough report back. A quick question in case I missed it. Did you consider the recommendation to include ecological resources beyond sort of like those that are protected by the state, like for example through the WRP and so forth?
The areas designated by the WRP. No, we're defining natural resources in the rule to include wetlands, water bodies, forests, resources of that nature, and we're in communication with DEC about their recommendations around this. But we have not considered adding like WRP identified areas to the natural resources definition.
Why? Why not?
There wasn't any evidence in our WRP review, for example. We reviewed all of the WRPs that have been conducted for projects with under 250 units in the past 10 years, and there were no problems that arose with regards to those projects and those special area designations. There were no changes to projects, design changes to projects due to a WRP that would fit this criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you for all the work you've done and for meeting with us. And I had asked a question the other day when I had the briefing about whether we could expect to have a review of this new fast track policy at some point when staff would come back and report to us how the review, how many projects have actually gone through the review, how many, at what time it took, so we could see whether in fact this was a useful tool.
Yes, I believe what we told you is we don't know exactly the timing that's appropriate for that, but we are very invested in making sure that this proposal does what we expect it to. We are putting in measures in order to be able to track these kinds of projects in the future and understand how they're moving through this process, if they're moving through it more quickly, if there are any issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, great. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last proposed hearing follow-ups is gaming facility text amendment, which had a public hearing at the February 7th public meeting. There was a memo in your weekend materials, and Stephen Johnson is here to present.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to give a post-hearing update on the Department's gaming facility text amendment. As a reminder, the purpose of the text amendment is to add the gaming facility use into the zoning resolution for the first time, which would allow New York City to be considered as a possible location for a gaming facility. Gaming facility applications have not been submitted to the state yet, and community advisory committees have not yet been formed. So the first item I wanted to discuss is that during the public review process, we heard questions and comments from the Commission as well as from community boards about the likelihood of casinos in the distant future and the parameters of the proposed text related to that. So the Department is proposing a modification of the text to include a sunset provision for the submission of gaming applications to the New York State Gaming Commission. So the purpose of the modification is to provide assurances that the proposed text is only available to the current round of gaming applications. The Department believes it is highly unlikely, but there is a hypothetical situation where if any of the 3 gaming licenses are not awarded, then the state could then create a new process and a new definition of terms and have a new round of applications for whatever licenses were not awarded, and perhaps in different locations in the city. So as I mentioned, the Department doesn't believe this will happen because the state is motivated to award all 3 licenses, and they created this specific process for these 3 licenses, and they, of course, they're eager to capitalize on the minimum $500 million investment from each entity that has awarded a license. But in order to provide these assurances and establish clear parameters, the department is proposing to add the sunset date into the proposed text, and that date is June 30th, 2025. In a more bureaucratic modification, we've also added the date of the referral of the gaming text, and that's December 5th. And the placeholder for that date was in the original file text. And I also want to update you on the latest round of resolutions submitted to the City Planning Commission. The latest tally is 3 community boards have approved with conditions, 16 community boards have disapproved, the Manhattan Borough Board disapproved, and 4 borough presidents have approved, including 3 with conditions. Now, we can discuss any of those issues raised by the resolutions, but most of those we have discussed previously, but I will highlight a few of the new resolutions submitted. So Queens Community Board 5, which is the area including Middle Village, Glendale, and Maspeth, they voted 19-17 to approve with the condition that no more than 3 licenses are awarded in the downstate region. We have received 3 more Borough President resolutions since the last time I brought you this update. Manhattan Borough President Levine approved with 3 conditions. The first is that the use only be in commercial districts, and that the ULURP be part of the review of gaming applications, and that the text requires any gaming facility to be compliant with the existing zoning regulations. Those first 2 conditions echoed what the Brooklyn Borough President Reynoso previously submitted in his approval letter. Bronx Borough President Gibson approved without conditions and supports the intent of the text amendment. Queens Borough President Richards approved with the condition that any gaming facility awarded a license must have a community advisory board that will act as a, quote, watchdog for local community benefits, workforce development, and issues any gaming facility may cause to the surrounding community. And then, of course, to wrap up, at the February 7th public hearing, there were 7 speakers in favor of the application, none against, and they all mentioned the possible economic benefits and union jobs that a gaming facility could bring. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Let me go to Commissioner Cerullo.
So just a question, this is really just thinking ahead. So the sunset provision makes perfect sense. And obviously it all relates to this round. Let's say 5 years from now, there's another round created, similar situation, this language is in the text, but it no longer is effective because it would have sunset in 2025, I guess, whatever the date was.
Yes, June.
So would the commission have, would the expectation would be that the commission would have to either create a new sunset if we were still working on that theory to sort of make this alive again?
Sure. So
if that process is the same process,
right,
and would require that, which I'm assuming.
There's two paths for that. There's the path with a whole new round of new licenses that would require a state referendum, and then there's the path for these 3 licenses. Are you referring if one of these 3 are not awarded?
No, I'm thinking of it. These 3 are awarded. They're all awarded within this window of time. And 5 years from now, the state determines we want to add more casinos to the city.
So the first thing would be a statewide referendum that would have to be approved by the citizens of New York State. Then they would, if it's approved, then that would go into the New York State legislation and the Constitution. And then they would have to decide where those casinos would be located. New York City, the downstate region, may or may not be interested in those. If we're not interested, then there's nothing for us to do here. If New York City is interested and they're available to be awarded in New York City, the downstate region, then we would have to do a whole new text amendment and have a whole new process established. So this text amendment that's before you will have nothing to do with any future process.
So it isn't just about changing the date.
What's that?
It wouldn't be just about changing the date.
That's right, right.
Understood.
It's tied to the legislation, which is the December date, the referral date.
Understood. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin?
Thanks for that, but it makes me think of the future. So assume that 1, 2, or 3 are awarded downstate. They start construction. They run into problems. They need to change the plan. What would be the approval process for that?
So it would depend on what they're changing. So if they're changing something minor, like who runs the restaurant in the facility, that doesn't impact us. If it's they're changing the parking into a game room. So if they're approved with a 500 space parking garage and they're like, we underestimated parking, we want a whole new parking structure built, they don't go through the existing text amendment. They would have to come back to the CPC for a modification for any significant change.
Even though we didn't approve it?
That's right. The City Planning Commission is the body that would be reviewing modifications to the application.
And where is that, so we can all feel comfortable that the CAC doesn't approve something and then it morphs into something else?
Well, so then you're looking at the existing zoning, right? So you're looking at what was approved, and you can think of that as a process, whether it was a large scale, a ULIP application. But it was approved by the CAC, not. And it was approved, and then whatever modifications, major modifications to that, would then be reviewed by the City Planning Commission.
Does the CAC
is gone after they approve.
And would any subsequent modifications have to go to state gaming, for instance?
Well, they would be heavily involved because, like I said, they approve, the number of slots, how the gaming is run, where the tables are, who runs the restaurants. They are in control of all those things that are less significant to us here in the city, because that's more internal. So they're running the gaming. So they would also be reviewing simultaneously, but the city would be the one that's reviewing any major changes, modifications to the approved site.
That just sounds a little strange to me since we didn't approve anything about it.
That's right.
But would it be considered a non-conforming use? Non-conforming, non-complying use under zoning? Once we take them out as a zoning category, what are they?
It would be complying as approved by the CAC. So whatever is approved by the CAC would be deemed compliant with the zoning resolution.
So if it burns down, the whole thing burns down, they can rebuild?
Exactly what was approved. That's right.
And if it burns down and it takes them 3 years to get their financing?
That's also acceptable.
Even though it's non-complying?
In extenuating circumstances, force majeure, whatever it is, they'll have the ability to rebuild according to what was approved.
And if they just wanted to change the type of gaming and the state approved it, we would have no role in that?
So what do you mean by type of gaming?
Well, let's say they moved from 100 slot machines to 4,000 slot machines, and they took away the baccarat table and the poker tables, and FanDuel moved in with them, and they just had a whole floor of sports betting.
That would be up to the Gaming Commission. Now, if they said, we're going to change over to a different FanDuel or some other site, and we want to build a new building.
No, if they did it in the existing building, even though it's not gaming as we understood it to be.
If it's gaming that's controlled by the Gaming Commission, then that's their
And is FanDuel or something like that controlled by them?
I don't know if they control those online.
Because there are more and more of them every day.
Yeah, they're very popular, sports betting, all those things, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me follow up on one of Commissioner Benjamin's questions, though, because and I just want to make sure that we're clear on this point. So the example that Commissioner Benjamin gave said there's a and that you cooperated in helping here on the 500 space parking lot that was inadequate, and they want to build more parking for the facility. CAC is gone.
That's right.
And they would come to this commission for the modification. But to Commissioner Benjamin's point, what is the standard and what exactly are we modifying in that situation? Because when we're modifying a large-scale plan, we know we're looking at the findings that have been done before. We know if it's a ULURP mod or a non-ULURP mod. What's the standard of modification? What is the action? Just so that we understand that point, because that's what I think Commissioner Benjamin was getting at. What is the thing at that stage of the game? And I recognize is not the point of the text amendment. The text amendment is designed to give the city a fair shake and to try to even playing field and not have us do duplicative work from the state. But it's an interesting example.
Sure.
What is the action?
So there's a possibility of actions, and it would follow the regular departmental guidelines. So we have a crew of technical review division, our different zoning divisions, urban design divisions, the borough offices, who determine whether it's a ULURP mod, a non-ULURP mod, substantial compliance, or if it's so minor it just goes to DOB and we don't even get it. So that's the type of action that it could be. So if it's a non-ULURP modification, that would be an example of something that was minor, like we always do with minor modifications, that we deem it minor enough that we can do that as more of a bureaucratic action. But then when we get modifications that are more substantial, and that kicks into ULURP modification.
Right, but when we do those, they're modifications to an existing plan that we had previously had a hand in.
Sure.
In this situation, it's a plan that the CAC would have evaluated and defined. And, you know, it feels like almost anything would be a non-ULURP mod because there was no ULURP to begin with, except for the ones for which there is ULURP. Anyway, well, so we can come back to this, but I do think there's the question as to what the standard would be in that situation for the future modification. Again, I don't think it has any bearing on the specific question here, but it is I think an important question for us to know the answer to as to what happens after the CACs disappear, assuming there is a casino anywhere in the 5 boroughs, and then somebody needs to make a modification that is not about baccarat, and it is a modification about either parking or buildings. What's the standard, and how will we review that?
That's when it falls back into what we do here, and our as of right zoning, and
it's as of right. If the parking is a parking structure, that's as of right, except that it's part of the gaming. If it's as of right in a C zone as an accessory parking lot, would we ever see it?
So, for example, using the parking again, so if it were in Manhattan and say only 215 parking spaces are permitted on the site, and the development gets, through the CAC, gets 300 parking spaces, and then super successful 10 years down the road, they say we need more parking, we want to build a new structure, we would look at that at the city as to what our standards are, and as we know, Manhattan Core is very strict on parking, and that requires a special permit to get something above what's permitted through Section 1345, and we would look at the conditions and the findings and see if they're met, and see if they have an argument. There's I guess this is probably too much detail, but there is a special permit for economic development at 1345. So if they went through that, they could say, well, through economic development, we can have more and lay out their case, and then that's how it would be reviewed and judged by the city.
But if it was otherwise as of right, if they had no parking and they wanted to put in a 200-space parking lot?
So then they would have to change the approved site plan. So we'd say, where is that parking being located? Are you putting it on open space? Are you putting it on green space? Are you building a tower on, there's all the details that we always look at when we get projects.
Right, and I may be saying this badly, I think Dan said it better than I did, but I'm just trying to make the connection between what the CAC approves the site plan. We may like it, we may hate it, we may think it's great, we may think they've missed the boat completely, but it is what it is. And then if they come back for anything, if they want to change anything, they don't have another CAC who approved this plan. They come back to us, even if it's as of right, we have to approve a modification to a thing we didn't approve.
You wouldn't have to approve it. So, I mean, as a comparative example, you could see a large scale from 40 years ago, and our standards have changed. And if that large scale came back and they said, we want to do these things, we wouldn't just be looking at it through the eyes of 1970. We'd be looking at it through the eyes of the regulations now, our concerns now. We have a whole set of environmental issues that we review the projects in that we didn't in the 70s, for example. So we would be applying our standards, our current standards, on an application that was approved by some other entity through this process.
I don't want to belabor the point, but you can see maybe we should talk about this later.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and I do think that maybe it is that the CAC's site plan and decision becomes the underlying zoning from which you would seek the relief, and therefore you would treat it as if, and I think this is what you're saying, Stephen, you treat it as if that becomes the underlying zoning. So if the full stop. So any change to it requires either a zoning change, probably not a zoning change, it would probably be either a special permit for economic development, a special permit for parking, a special permit for this or that, but that is the underlying zoning. So any change of it requires come to the department, come to the City Planning Commission, because that's what's baked, and anything else is a deviation. And assuming that it's not just a ministerial question, it is a deviation that requires full ULURP at that point. That's really the point I think that you're making.
Yes, that's
okay. All right. Well, let's follow up, make sure that we're all in agreement that that's the process. But certainly, I think that this change is an important one. It's belt and suspenders because that was the intent. But it's also good that we're, I think, delineating the time horizon for this special for this text amendment. So, okay. Other questions here? Commissioner Rampersad, go ahead.
Real quick comment. If the CSC approves it, we go ahead, they'll follow the building department, theoretically, get it approved. Does this agency ever get copies of approved plans of what? So will we be getting? I'm just curious how that works.
We would not get, we could get them if we wanted them. We could ask DOB for copies of the plans, and if that might be helpful to us. I think also to let you know that the Department of City Planning is part of the process of reviewing the applications once they're submitted. Mm-hmm. So there's city agencies, EDC, Parks Department for the ones that impact parks property. We'll be getting the applications to review it under the existing zoning and how it compares against the base of the as of right. And all the different development guidelines, our urban design team is going to be looking at it too. So in that sense, we will have copies of the application and what they're proposing.
Just curious how it evolved.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. With that, thank you, Stephen. With that, Sarah, is there anything else on our agenda today?
No, Chair Grodnick. There are no other items.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you all very much. We'll look forward to picking this back up on Wednesday for our public hearings. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You're looking forward to that, huh?
I am.
You're such a pro.
Yeah, if you have a second.
Yeah.